Chapter 34-39. Okay, don't be angry, it's bad for your body. Can't I apologize to you? Yang Kai squinted at her. I don't see any sincerity in your apology. Yu Meng asked, then what kind of sincerity do you want? Yang Kai hooked his finger at her, and Yu Meng put her ear close to him. Yang Kai whispered a few words into her ear. Yu Meng immediately glared at him, but nodded, okay. Once a word is said, even a team of 4 horses can't take it back. You said it yourself. Kai Yang suddenly beamed with joy. I said it. Yu Meng nodded happily. As long as you can win, you can do whatever you want. Yang Kai was a little dumbfounded. Win? You're a demon saint, how can I win against you? He immediately shouted angrily, you tricked me. Yu Meng giggled, and with a flash of her delicate body, she turned into a stream of light and rushed forward. She even turned back to provoke him. Come chase me, if you can catch me, I can give you some benefits. If you don't beat me up for 3 days, you'll be the one to tear the tiles off the roof. Yang Kai grinned, and with the fluctuation of the space principle, his figure flashed and disappeared, chasing after her. The 2 figures, one in front and one behind, swept through the void at an extremely fast speed. Although Yang Kai tried his best to stimulate the space principle, Yu Meng's strength was unfathomable after her cultivation was fully recovered, and Yang Kai was unable to catch up. He kept following behind her, which made him very depressed. After a full 2 hours, Yu Meng suddenly stopped in the void, slightly raised her head, and opened her arms as if she wanted to embrace the whole world, breathing in large mouthfuls of air. Yang Kai shook his head and rushed over from behind. Finally back, Yu Meng let out a long breath, a satisfied expression on her face. Yang Kai glanced at her, then looked down at the fragment below, and said, you said you would take me to a place, is it the demon territory? Yu Meng nodded, yes. A dignified demon saint did not hesitate to use the heart seal secret technique to deal with me. It seems that my space principle is very attractive to the demon territory, Yang Kai smiled. Yu Meng, the space principle is a very strange power. Although there are many people in the territory, in the star boundary, you and Li Wui. Li B. TTE. You. You think I don't want to? Yu Meng said helplessly, it's just that I used a secret technique to change my appearance, so I can only exert the strength of a second-order emperor in the star boundary, so how can I be your opponent? If you don't want to, how can I capture you and bring you to the demon territory? So that's how it is. Yang Kai suddenly understood and secretly rejoiced in his heart. His plan and Yu Meng's somewhat coincided, otherwise, it would not have been so easy to enter the territory of the demon race. After pondering for a moment, he said, then what do you want me to do? Help you arrange a space array and mobilize the demon race's army? Can you do this? Yu Meng looked at him in surprise. Yang Kai slowly shook his head, I can't. My space array can only work in one world. The situation in the demon territory is special. Even if I arrange a space array in the fragment worlds, they can't be connected to each other. So, if you brought me here for this matter, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Unless my attainments in space principles are deeper and I can break through the barriers of the small world's world force. Yu Meng smiled, I already expected this, so rest assured, we don't need you to arrange a space array. With the existence of the World Gate, it's quite convenient to mobilize the army in the demon territory. At worst, it'll just take a little more time. Then what do you want me to do? Yang Kai frowned. I'll tell you when the time comes. Seeing Yang Kai's unhappy expression, Yu Meng quickly changed the topic. Do you want to see my true face? She had disguised herself as Li Shiqing, so naturally, she would appear as Li Shiqing. Although she had recovered after returning to the demon territory, her face was always shrouded by a strange power. It was hazy, making it difficult for people to see clearly. Unless they were stronger than her, they could use their divine sense to break through the seal of that power. However, she had told Yang Kai before that her true face was not inferior to Li Shiqing's. Then again, she was a succubus demon and a demon saint level powerhouse, so her appearance was naturally not bad. No. To Yu Meng's surprise, Yang Kai actually raised his hand and refused. Yu Meng was stunned for a moment. Why? Are you afraid that I'm too ugly? Yang Kai said casually, even if you're as ugly as a pig, you're still a treasure in my heart, so your appearance doesn't mean anything to me. Your mouth is smeared with honey, no wonder you can deceive so many women. Yu Meng snorted and reached out to pinch Yang Kai's chin. Just like how Yang Kai dealt with her in the star boundary, she turned his face around. If you don't want to look, then I'll make you look. While speaking, the haze on her face slowly faded away, revealing a delicate and beautiful face. She was as pure and beautiful as a snow fairy, with an incomparably elegant appearance. She was as youthful as a mountain spring, without the slightest impurity, with a hint of holiness and purity. Yang Kai was originally a little annoyed by her means, but at this moment, he was somewhat stunned. Was this still a succubus demon? On the battlefield, he had seen many succubus demons, and even killed some, but which one of those succubus demons wasn't charming and seductive? Their eyes were full of lust, as if they could be in heat at any time, and their clothes were as revealing as possible, as if they couldn't wait to go to the battlefield naked to charm people. But Yu Meng completely overturned the impression of the succubus demon in Yang Kai's heart. What was with this pure feeling that he couldn't bear to destroy? Thinking of all the things he had done to Yu Meng before, Yang Kai inexplicably felt a sense of guilt. His heart trembled, and he quickly guarded his mind. Oh my God, this woman's bewitching technique had probably been cultivated to the extreme. Without doing anything, just her face was enough to shake his mind, making him feel that she was the most beautiful existence in the world. Any blasphemy to her was unforgivable. The corners of Yu Meng's eyes curved like crescent moons. She was very satisfied with Yang Kai's reaction and asked softly, "Do I look good?" Yang Kai nodded his head like a chicken pecking at rice. He reached out and hugged Yu Meng's soft waist, and without any explanation, put his mouth on hers. A slender jade finger suddenly blocked Yang Kai's mouth. Yu Meng looked at him playfully. It's not so easy to take advantage of me in the demon territory. In the past, she was bullied badly by Yang Kai in the star boundary. To think that she, a dignified demon saint, was forced to perish together with Yang Kai at the slightest provocation. She was even put on his lap and spanked without any resistance. Now that they were in her territory, how could she not torment Yang Kai? Yang Kai opened his mouth and sucked her finger in his mouth. He tried his best to tease her and said vaguely, "Yu Meng, I think it's time for us to consummate our marriage. You know my feelings, and I have already come to the demon territory with you. There is no turning back. Can you bear to see me suffer like this?" Yu Meng smiled sweetly. "I said, as long as you can beat me, you can do whatever you want." "How long will that take?" Yang Kai said with a bitter face. "What's the point of seeing it but not eating it?" "Then I don't care. Let go." Yu Meng slowly shook her head. Yang Kai curled her finger with his tongue and shook his head. "I won't let go." Yu Meng was both angry and amused. "Are you going to let go or not? If you don't, I won't be polite to you. How are you going to be rude?" Yang Kai smiled mischievously. Yu Meng looked helpless. She stretched out her other hand, curled her middle finger, and flicked Yang Kai's forehead as fast as lightning. With a bang, Yang Kai was directly bounced thousands of feet away before he could barely stabilize his body. He felt dizzy and almost fainted. After recovering with great difficulty, Yang Kai roared at Yu Meng, "Are you trying to kill me?" Yu Meng said with a smile, "I'll teach you a lesson. If you continue to pester me, I'll deal with you like this again." Yang Kai's eyes widened and his face was full of resentment. It was really 30 years in the east and 30 years in the west. Every dog had its day. If he had known earlier, he would have raped her directly in the star boundary. Now there wouldn't be so much trouble. But now, he couldn't beat her. He had to endure it. His heart was sullen, and the expression on his face was ugly. Yu Meng stretched out her hand and a great force came over. Yang Kai involuntarily flew to her side, unable to control his body at all. Yu Meng stretched out her hand and grabbed Yang Kai's collar, pulled him over, stood on tiptoe, and gently kissed Yang Kai on the forehead. Yang Kai wiped his forehead and snorted with disgust. "What do you mean by giving me a date for every blow? Are you trying to coax a child? If you say so, then so be it. All right, stop fooling around." I'll take you to a place first. Saying so, she urged her demonic chi to wrap Yang Kai and rushed towards a nearby world gate. Yang Kai remained silent, as if he was sulking. Yu Meng didn't care about him. As her cultivation recovered, this woman seemed to have become more confident. She no longer tried to kill Yang Kai like she did in the star boundary, which made Yang Kai feel a little lost. The two flew all the way, passing through one world gate after another, passing through one world gate after another. Just as Yu Meng had said before, these world fragments were very different. Some were so big that one couldn't see the end of it at a glance, with a radius of tens of thousands of miles. There were also small world fragments like the one where the passage between the two worlds was located. As long as one flew a little higher, one could clearly see the shape of the entire continent. Moreover, the environment of these world fragments was also different. Some world fragments were rich in world energy and full of vitality, while some world fragments were dead silent and lacking in world energy. Along the way, Yang Kai clicked his tongue in amazement. However, without exception, these world fragments were full of rich demonic chi. Creatures that were not in demon territory could not survive at all. Chapter 3440. After half a day passed like this, Yang Kai could no longer hold it in. He came to the demon territory this time for another purpose. Yu Meng only thought that he was desperate in the astral boundary, so she turned to the demon race in anger. She did not know his true purpose, nor did she know that he had already transferred the heart seal secret technique to the soul-warming lotus. Yu Meng did not hesitate to sacrifice herself to plant the secret technique, but it did not bind Yang Kai much. Instead, it bound herself tightly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he naturally had to inquire about some information. Therefore, Yang Kai didn't bother to get angry with Yu Meng and started chatting with her casually. The atmosphere gradually became lively, and Yang Kai felt that the time was about right, so he asked casually, "By the way, Yu Meng, how many demon saint are there in the demon territory?" This was definitely information that even the great emperors could not figure out. If he could find out, it would be of great help to the future situation. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will not be defeated in 100 battles. There are a total of 12 demon saint in the demon territory. Yu Meng did not suspect anything. What's more, this was not a secret. Since Yang Kai came to the demon territory, he could find someone to inquire about this. Every demon saint has a different number of half-saint subordinates, and they are in charge of a different number of fragments. 12. Yang Kai whistled. Compared to the astral boundary, there are 2 more. Yu Meng smiled slightly. Now there are 13, but there are only 9 in the astral boundary. That's true. Yang Kai nodded. The Night Shadow Great Emperors had defected to the enemy. Compared to the demon territory, the number of Great Emperors on the astral boundary side was now 4 less than the number of Great Emperors in the demon territory. This number did not include the Great Emperors of the Bright Moon Empire who were currently in prison. If the Bright Moon Empire, whose fate was unknown, were included, the number of high-end combatants on the astral boundary side would be even lower. The term bottle of heaven and earth should also be used in the demon territory. The reason why there were more demon saint in the demon territory than the great emperors in the astral world was probably because the bottle in the demon territory had a larger capacity than the bottle in the astral world. Therefore, there were 12 demon saint existences. The situation in the astral boundary was not optimistic. Yang Kai was faintly worried in his heart. These 12 demon saint alone were not easy to deal with. If they really rushed into the astral boundary, who knew how much damage they would cause? Perhaps, the entire astral boundary would be destroyed. Is the demon saint the most powerful existence in the demon territory? Yang Kai asked again. I seem to have heard that there is a great demon god in the demon territory. With a swoosh, Yu Meng's figure suddenly stopped. Yang Kai did not react and rushed far away before turning around and flying back. He asked curiously, "What's wrong?" Yu Meng looked at Yang Kai with a dignified face and said, "Where did you hear this news?" Yang Kai shrugged, "I forgot. I don't know who casually mentioned it to me or what ancient book I read." Yu Meng's expression made him feel that something was wrong. She was actually a little nervous and uneasy. After pondering for a moment, Yu Meng said, "Don't mention those words in the future." She did not say which words she was referring to, but Yang Kai was not stupid. How could he not know what she was referring to? Why? Yang Kai frowned. "Be obedient," Yu Meng sternly said. "Absolutely, absolutely do not mention it again. Otherwise, if something happens to you, even I can't protect you." So serious? Yang Kai was shocked. Yu Meng was already a demon saint, but even she could not protect him. So, it seemed that the great demon god really existed. Moreover, he was an existence above the demon saint. Originally, when he had been training in the dream world Thousand Illusions for dozens of years, in the final battle, the evergreen divine tree sacrificed itself and used its essence to seal the passage between the two worlds. From the other side of the passage, a giant hand covered the sky. Even though it was separated by the power of the world, the power that the giant hand displayed was unimaginable, almost causing Yang Kai to fail. That was a power that surpassed the demon saint. In the demon territory, people called it the great demon god. The things in the dream world Thousand Illusions were based on what had happened in the real world. In other words, in the long river of history, the great demon god had indeed appeared. But now, Yu Meng actually warned Yang Kai not to mention it with a serious face, which made Yang Kai a little confused. He did not know what the three words great demon god meant in the demon territory, but he could faintly feel the weight of these three words in this big world. "I know." Yang Kai nodded seriously. "I will definitely not mention it in the future." Yu Meng was obviously relieved. "That's good." Yang Kai said again, "What about the great emperors of the Bright Moon continent? I heard that he seems to have fallen somewhere in the demon territory. How is the situation now? Why are you asking this?" Yu Meng frowned slightly. Yang Kai sneered, "The people of the star boundary have gone too far. Now, I am powerless to take revenge. If I can kill one of their great emperors, it can be considered as collecting some interest." Yu Meng laughed and said, "Revenge is not urgent. You still have a lot of room for growth. It won't be too late to make plans after you have really grown up one day. Besides, the great emperors of the Bright Moon continent are not people you can kill just because you want to." Yang Kai winked at her and said, "I am not their opponent, but don't I still have you?" Yu Meng shook her head. "A great empress is like a cornered beast. I don't want to get involved in this trouble. What's more, I am not responsible for this matter. I have been staying in the star boundary all this time, so I don't know where the great emperors of the Bright Moon continent are trapped." Yang Kai also thought so. Yu Meng had been staying in the star boundary all this time, so how could she know what happened in the demon territory? It was a bit presumptuous of her to inquire about the great emperors of the Bright Moon continent from him, so he immediately closed his mouth to avoid making a mistake. It seemed that after settling down, he would have to make some inquiries. At the very least, he had to figure out the current location of the great emperors of the Bright Moon continent and whether they were dead or alive. Yu Meng led Yang Kai through one realm gate after another with ease. Half a day later, after passing through a stargate, the two suddenly came to a colorful world. Yu Meng turned her head and smiled at Yang Kai. "We're home. This is your continent." Yang Kai turned his head and looked around, only to see that the entire continent was filled with brilliant and dazzling colors. Upon closer inspection, these bright and beautiful colors were actually emitted by large tracts of flowers. Almost half of the entire continent was wrapped in these colorful flowers, and under the dazzling sunlight, the entire world seemed like a beautiful picture scroll. The continent was undoubtedly not small. Yang Kai couldn't see the end of it at all. For a time, Yang Kai was amazed. Before this, he never thought that there would be such a strange world. One of them. Yu Meng smiled slightly. Yang Kai understood. Yu Meng had said before that there were 12 demon saint in the demon territory. Each demon saint had a different number of half-saint subordinates, and they were in charge of a different number of fragments. The one in front of him was obviously one of the fragments she was in charge of. Seemingly because she had returned home, Yu Meng's mood became more and more cheerful. She led Yang Kai forward for a while and a huge palace suddenly appeared in their field of vision. The palace was built in the middle of hundreds of millions of flowers. Even the air seemed to be filled with the fragrance of those flowers, which was extremely charming. Before the two of them could get close, a stream of light shot out from the front of the palace. The stream of light was dark red and was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of them. With a flash of light, a handsome young man with an extraordinary appearance appeared. The young man wore a blood-red cloak that draped over his back, giving him an awe-inspiring appearance. He was clad in shining armor and had an extraordinary temperament. As soon as he appeared, he cupped his hands and said, "Master, blood demon." Yang Kai saw this person and guessed his race. This was because this person had a faint smell of blood. Moreover, this guy was a half-saint blood demon. It seemed that this guy was one of Yu Ru Meng's capable subordinates. Otherwise, he wouldn't be working in Yu Ru Meng's palace. Yu Ru Meng nodded non-committally and said, "Nothing happened recently, right?" The blood demon half-saint replied, "Nothing happened. I was just ordered to transfer a lot of people from Master's territory." As he spoke, he looked at Yu Ru Meng with a scorching gaze. His eyes flashed with undisguised possessiveness. Yang Kai couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, thinking that this blood demon half-saint was quite bold. He actually showed such an expression in front of Yu Ru Meng. Wasn't he afraid that Yu Ru Meng would be angry? Glancing at Yu Ru Meng, Yang Kai suddenly became unhappy because Yu Ru Meng was calm and collected, as if she was used to this. This cheap slave. Yang Kai cursed in his heart. Although he had used the power of the soul-warming lotus to transfer the heart seal secret technique to Yu Ru Meng, which had greatly reduced the influence on him over the past few days, he and Yu Ru Meng had done everything they could except for the last line of defense. Naturally, he treated her as his own woman. Now that his woman was being stared at by another man, but she still acted as if nothing had happened, Yang Kai was naturally in a bad mood. On the other side, Yu Ru Meng nodded and said, "I understand." In the war between the two worlds, not only did the star boundary need to transfer people from its territory, but the demon territory also needed to do the same. Every fragment was mobilized, and the fragments under Yu Ru Meng's control were naturally no exception. While speaking, the blood demon half-saint suddenly turned his head to look at Yang Kai and asked suspiciously, "Master, what's the situation with this human?" Humans and demons could not coexist, and Yu Ru Meng had suddenly returned with a human. It did not look like a captive because this human was actually standing next to Yu Ru Meng, which made him a little annoyed. Even when he was standing next to Yu Ru Meng, he was still a few steps behind her. How could this human be so bold? Thinking of this, killing intent rose and the pressure of the half-saint filled the air. Yang Kai grinned at the half-saint and took a step to the side, getting closer to Yu Ru Meng. He even reached out and hugged Yu Ru Meng's waist and said lightly, "I am Ru Meng's husband." Husband? The blood demon half-saint's eyes widened as he looked at Yu Ru Meng. When he saw Yu Ru Meng's indifferent expression, his heart suddenly jumped. This can't be real, right? Otherwise, why would the master not have the slightest intention to resist being hugged by someone? As a dignified demon saint, if he really wanted to resist, he could easily crush this human into powder. Chapter 34-41. While his mind was racing, the half-saint of demon race suddenly shouted, "You dare to be rude to master? You're courting death." Raising his hand, he sent out a burst of blood demon chi towards Yang Kai. This blood demon chi looked insignificant, but in fact, it was extremely fast and contained infinite power. After all, it was the attack of a half-saint in anger, so how could it be underestimated? Yang Kai's expression was indifferent, and he didn't dodge. Just as the blood-evil chi was about to reach him, a jade hand suddenly stretched out of thin air and accurately grabbed the blood-evil chi, crushing it with a light squeeze. Yu Ru Meng shouted in a low voice, "Yu Sang, don't be rude." The half-saint of demon race called Yu Sang suddenly opened his eyes wide and said in disbelief, "Master, if he had only been suspicious before, then Yu Ru Meng's attitude was enough to confirm what the human in front of him had just said. Did Master really have an extraordinary relationship with this lowly human? How was this possible? What did this human do to gain the favor of a devil saint? Yu Sang was furious and wanted to tear Yang Kai into pieces, but with Yu Ru Meng's protection, he didn't have the chance. Yu Meng was too lazy to talk to him, and she didn't even have the intention to explain. She just raised her chin slightly and shouted in a dignified voice, "Stand down." Yu Sang's face was slightly ferocious as he stared fiercely at Yang Kai for a while, then lowered his head, cupped his hands, and left. Staring at his back, Yang Kai narrowed his eyes slightly. Damn, I met a love rival as soon as I arrived. This isn't a good sign. If it was an ordinary demon king, then it would be fine, but a half-saint is still a bit difficult for me to deal with. It seems that I have to be careful of this guy in the future. Yu Meng turned to Yang Kai and said, "The demon territory is different from the star boundary. The people of the demon race are straightforward. They don't beat around the bush like you humans. Don't meet him alone when I'm not with you." "He dares to kill me?" Yang Kai asked in surprise. "Didn't you see it just now?" Yang Kai was even more confused. "Why? Isn't he afraid you'll punish him? Isn't he your subordinate?" Yu Meng smiled faintly, the devil territory advocate's strength. If you are strong, everything you do is right. If you are weak, everything you do is wrong. If he killed you, I am not in a position to punish him. At most, I can only secretly avenge you. Yang Kai rolled his eyes and said, "What if I kill him?" "As long as you have the ability, you can kill whoever you want." Yang Kai nodded slightly, his eyes shining as he said, "Survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest." The demon territory is indeed a good place. A ferocious environment bred a ferocious race. Yang Kai somewhat understood how the demon race developed their fearlessness towards death. "Let's go. I'll settle you down first." After saying that, she led Yang Kai to the palace. The palace was very large, and the interior decoration was also luxurious and grand. Along the way, there were guards and maids constantly bowing and saluting, but they also cast curious glances at Yang Kai. In the devil territory, a human suddenly appeared in the palace of a demon saint. Naturally, the demon race was very surprised, but at least there was no unpleasant scene like before. Yang Kai followed beside Yu Meng, deliberately walking side by side with her with an arrogant look. After walking around, they came to a garden. Yu Meng turned to look at Yang Kai and said, "What do you think of this place?" Yang Kai walked in with his hands behind his back. He looked around and found that the environment was good and the area was quite large. Naturally, he had no objections. He turned to Yu Meng and asked, "Do you live here too?" Yu Meng smiled slightly. "Do you want me to live here?" Yang Kai stepped forward and held her hand. He said shyly, "If you are not by my side, what should I do if that Yu Sang comes to trouble me again? I am not his opponent." Yu Meng glanced at him and said with a smile, "Don't worry, he doesn't have the guts to do anything in the palace. It's better to be safe than sorry." Yang Kai winked at her. Yu Meng poked his head in annoyance and pulled her hand back. She turned and said, "You can stay here and wait for me to settle down. I will come to see you again." "Don't go." Yang Kai shouted at her graceful back, "Why are you leaving when you haven't finished talking?" After shouting a few words, Yu Meng disappeared. Yang Kai touched his chin and smacked his lips. He muttered in his heart that it was better that she left. If he stayed with Yu Meng, it would be really inconvenient to do things. He turned around and walked into a large hall with a refreshed expression. He grabbed a maid and asked her about the situation. Then, he found a side room and went in. Since he had become the demon race's territory, he had discovered that the world principles in the demon territory were slightly different from those in the star boundary. However, since they were both large worlds, there was no suppression of strength. However, if he wanted to exert his full strength, he needed to first familiarize himself with the world principles in the demon territory. Otherwise, if he really wanted to fight with someone, he was afraid that his hands and feet would be tied. For the next few days, Yang Kai stayed in his room and did not come out. He worked hard to make his cultivation compatible with the world principles in the demon territory. These few days were peaceful. Yu Meng was nowhere to be seen. He did not know what she was doing. Yu Sang also did not come to trouble him. Perhaps, as Yu Meng said, he did not have the guts to do anything in the palace. A few days later, Yang Kai walked out of his room. After several days of hard work, he had eliminated the world principles in the demon territory. Now, it was time to act. He did not come to the demon territory for sightseeing. He was not free and unfettered. Several great emperors had asked him to come and rescue the great emperors of the bright moon. That old man Heaven's Revelations also said that he had a calamity to face in the demon territory. If he could survive it, he would soar to the sky. If other people said this, it would be nonsense. However, Heaven's Revelations said it was different. Yang Kai did not know what kind of calamity he would face, but at present, he could only take one step at a time. After pondering for a moment, Yang Kai decided to start with the geographical distribution of the demon territory. The demon territory was like a broken mirror, composed of countless fragments of continents. He felt that he had to at least figure out what those fragments were and which continents were connected to each other. Otherwise, even if he found the place where the great emperors of the bright moon were trapped, he would not be able to go there. After making up his mind, Yang Kai came to the main hall and sat on a huge chair that could accommodate a person's reclining position. The chair seemed to be made of bones, and there were a few ferocious skulls on the back as decorations. It looked wild and ferocious. He sat there in an imposing manner and extended his hand to pat the armrest beside him. It was pretty cool, and he wondered whether he should get something like that when he returned to Towering Palace in the future. That way, he could unknowingly increase his awe-inspiring presence. Coughing lightly, Yang Kai opened his mouth and shouted, "Servant." There was a rustling sound outside the door, and 4 or 5 maidservants came in. All of them lowered their heads and waited until they were a few feet away before kneeling on the ground. "Stand up and talk." Yang Kai raised his hand in a somewhat tired manner. He didn't like this in the High Heaven Palace, let alone in the demon territory. The maidservants hesitated for a while, and then stood up tremblingly, but they all lowered their heads and didn't dare to raise their heads. Yang Kai laughed and said, "What are you afraid of? I don't eat people. Raise your heads." The maidservants below him stuttered for a while and dilly-dallied to death. Yang Kai patted the armrest and said, "Are you all deaf?" Seeing that he was about to get angry, the maidservants carefully raised their heads. Glancing around, Yang Kai trembled and almost slid down from the chair. He stared blankly in front of him, and his stomach churned. It wasn't because he was scared, but because he was disgusted. Not to mention that none of the maidservants were good-looking, their faces were all grotesquely shaped. Some of them had their mouths split open to the roots of their ears, revealing a mouthful of saw-like fangs, some had bulging eyes as if they would fall out at any time, and some had small holes on their faces, like a beehive. The only one who was slightly normal had a face full of scars, like a hideous earthworm. What a strange group of maidservants. Yang Kai knew that there were hundreds of races in the demon territory, and each race had its own characteristics, but he never thought that there would be such ugly maidservants of the demon race in this world. Seeming to have noticed that Yang Kai's expression wasn't right, the maidservants quickly lowered their heads. Yang Kai dryly coughed, and the corners of his mouth twitched as he said, "Which one of you is in charge?" The maidservant with the hideous scars on her face stepped forward and said in a low voice, replying to Master, "This servant is in charge." Fortunately, this one was still normal. If it were any other woman, Yang Kai wouldn't even be in the mood to talk. He wasn't someone who judged people by their appearance, but the main reason was that these witches were too strange, and no one had the courage to talk to them. After pondering for a moment, he said, "When I came over a few days ago, I didn't seem to see you. A few days ago, when Yu Meng brought them over, he also saw several maidservants. All of them were as beautiful as flowers and had enchanting figures. How come they had changed so much today?" The maidservant said, "This servant isn't sure, this servant was only transferred here a few days ago." Yang Kai frowned, "They were also transferred here a few days ago?" "Yes." "Damn, it was all Yu Meng's doing." Yang Kai finally understood that these maidservants were probably specially transferred by that lowly maidservant to serve Yang Kai. Those maidservants with good figures and pretty faces must have been transferred away. "What kind of person do you think I am?" Yang Kai was burning with anger. Yu Meng was obviously preventing him from stealing, so she deliberately transferred a few strange-looking women over. Such women, no one would have any appetite. But then again, He had always been impatient and lecherous in front of Yu Meng, and Yu Meng had never let him have his way, so it was inevitable that she would be so defensive. Fortunately, Yang Kai didn't have such thoughts, so he was only angry for a while, and then he calmed down. He took a deep breath and said, "What's your name?" The maidservant said, "This servant is called Xiao Wu. What's the matter with the scar on your face?" Yang Kai asked again. Xiao Wu whispered, "I made a mistake, so I was punished." She was actually punished. Yang Kai thought that it was caused by a fight with someone. It could be seen that Xiao Wu's appearance should be very good when she was intact, but with so many scars on her face, she was completely disfigured. This was undoubtedly a very cruel punishment for a woman. Chapter 34-42. Yang Kai did not ask her what she had done wrong since it had nothing to do with him anyway. After a few casual words, he changed the topic. "It's like this. This king is new here and is not familiar with the situation in the demon domain. I would like to ask if there is a map I can take a look at." "Map?" Xiao Wu thought for a while and said, "Master, if you want a map, you can ask the holy sage. I think the holy sage should have one." The holy sage that she was talking about was probably Yu Meng. Although the holy spirits in the savage wilderness ancient land also called themselves the holy sage, they were not comparable to the demon saint in terms of ability and cultivation. The so-called holy sages were not on the same level. Yang Kai twitched the corner of his mouth and waved his hand. "It is such a small matter. There is no need to trouble the holy sage." He did not want Yu Meng to know what he was doing, so that she would not be suspicious. Although the possibility was very small, it was better to guard against it. Xiao Wu thought for a while and said, "Master, you can go to the sacred city and look for it. I think it is sold there." "Oh." Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. "It is sold outside." Xiao Wu said, "You can find everything in the sacred city." Yang Kai grinned, "Very good, then I'll have to trouble you to take me out for a walk." "Master, you want to go out?" Xiao Wu looked up at Yang Kai in surprise and quickly lowered her head. Yang Kai said, "Why? I can't go out." "Did the holy sage tell you not to go out?" "No." Xiao Wu hesitated and said, "But master, if you want to go out, please allow me to ask the holy sage." "Ask for what?" Yang Kai got down from the chair and strode out. "Even if the sky falls, I will hold it up. Follow me." On the other side, Xiao Wu could not help but feel a little anxious when she saw Yang Kai acting so decisively, but it was too late to stop him. She could only order the other maidservants to inform the holy master of Yang Kai's movements while she hurriedly followed Yang Kai's pace. The two of them, one in front and one behind, shuttled back and forth in the palace. Although Yang Kai wasn't familiar with this place, he still remembered the route when he had come here with Yu Meng last time. So, he quickly left the palace. As expected, the maids and guards he met on the way looked at him in surprise. When he was far away, they whispered to each other. He didn't know what they were talking about, but he didn't encounter any obstruction. Outside the palace, there was a large road that could accommodate more than a dozen carriages side by side that led directly to a bustling city more than a dozen kilometers away. Looking at the city from afar, it wasn't the slightest bit inferior to the large cities in the star boundary. In fact, it even surpassed them. The city had 8 gates, 2 each in the north, south, east, and west. The city gates were majestic, and the city walls towered high. With Yang Kai in the front and the maidservant Xiao Wu behind him, it didn't take long for them to reach the city gate. Yang Kai was a little worried that he, a human, would encounter any trouble when he entered the city. After all, this was the demon race's territory. The demon race wasn't so hospitable. Although he was brought here by Yu Meng, not every demon race knew this. But when he arrived at the city gate, he realized that he was thinking too much. Although he was a human, he didn't have any characteristics of the demon race. But as long as he didn't use his power, most of the demon race wouldn't find any clues. They had never seen a human before. Who knew what a human looked like? The demon race that had seen a human was now in the star boundary. The reason why the demon race in the palace were surprised by him wasn't because he was a human, but because he was a man brought back by the Holy Senior. At the city gate, there were several fierce and powerful demon race guarding the city gate. All the passing demon race had to hand over something called a magic crystal in order to pass through the city gate. The magic crystal's function in the demon territory was the same as the source crystal's function in the star boundary. They were both hard currencies. Of course, Yang Kai didn't have a magic crystal, but he didn't need to pay. When a few demon race approached, Xiao Wu took out a token and waved it in front of them. The demon race respectfully retreated. After all, he was a person who walked out of the Holy Senior's palace, so he didn't need to pay. Entering peacefully like this, the bustling atmosphere suddenly filled Yang Kai's face, causing him to click his tongue in wonder. The demon race was bloodthirsty and warlike. He thought that the life in the demon race was very primitive, but now he knew that what was in the star boundary, it was also in the demon territory. For example, in the Holy City, there were straight and wide roads running from the north to the south. There were all kinds of shops on both sides of the streets, and there was an endless stream of people on the streets, shouting, bargaining, and so on. If it weren't for the obvious and strange demon race on the streets, Yang Kai would have thought that he was back in the star boundary. Master. Seeing that he was standing still, Xiao Wu called out softly from behind. Yes. Kai Yang nodded casually and immediately started walking forward. As he walked, he looked around with great interest. However, after a few steps, he heard Xiao Wu's low cry from behind him. He turned around and saw Xiao Wu sitting on the ground, holding her shoulder with a painful expression. Not far behind him, a burly demon race was walking as if he was flying. He swayed left and right as he walked, and the people in front of him all avoided him. Yang Kai was stunned for a moment, but immediately realized what was going on. He moved his feet and came behind the burly demon race, slapping him on the shoulder. The demon race was slapped so hard that he immediately became angry. He turned around, but there was no one behind him. Here. Kai Yang's face darkened as he lifted his head to look at him. Fuck, this guy was too tall. The demon race master looked down and saw Yang Kai, who was 2 heads shorter than him. Slowly turning around, the demon race master snorted and glared down at Yang Kai. What are you doing? Yang Kai gave him a thumbs up and pointed behind him. You knocked down my companion. The demon race looked up and saw Xiao Wu, who was slowly getting up from the ground. He grinned. So what? Apologize. Yang Kai smiled back. The demon race was stunned for a moment, then suddenly laughed loudly. His laughter rolled like thunder, and his huge body shook violently, as if he had heard the best joke in the world. Xiao Wu hurried over and said with a frightened face, Master, I'm fine. She didn't know how strong Yang Kai was, but she knew that the demon race in front of her was not to be trifled with. If Yang Kai got hurt because of a conflict, she would definitely be punished. Naturally, she wanted to make a big deal out of a small one. It's not about whether you're fine or not. You should apologize just because you bumped into someone. Yang Kai waved at her, indicating that she should stay aside. Xiao Wu pursed her lips and was a little speechless. Her eyes were full of anxiety. Hearing Yang Kai's words, the burly demon race snorted. What if I don't apologize? Yang Kai nodded. If you can't reason with him, then you can only use your fists. The demon race opened his eyes wide and said in surprise, You want to hit me? If you don't apologize, the demon race laughed again. This time, not only did he laugh, but he also said to the group of demon race passing by, This brat wants to hit me. When the demon race passing by heard this, they all stopped to watch the show. Some demon race even shouted, Beat him up, break his bones and pull out his intestines. This guy's skin is so soft and tender. His blood must be delicious. The group of people kept shouting. The burly demon race's smile disappeared and he looked at Yang Kai with a ferocious expression. You want to hit me? I'll hit you. When he finished speaking, he raised his fists high and punched at Yang Kai's head with the force of a thunderbolt. With such a tall and sturdy body and a condescending attacking posture, this punch was like a thunderbolt. It actually made a sound that broke through the air. When he made his move, the demon race surrounding him became excited. It was as if they had seen something fun and they couldn't take their eyes off him. Xiao Wu, on the other hand, exclaimed, Master, be careful. Yang Kai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although this demon race looked burly and strong, he was actually just a demon commander. equivalent to a Dao Source Realm cultivator in the human race. At most, he was just a second-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. But now, he actually dared to take the initiative to attack him. However, since he was already attacking, Yang Kai naturally couldn't let him. Gently raising his hand, Yang Kai stopped the two fists that were smashing down. His body didn't move, but the ground under his feet shattered. Then, with a slight force, he kicked out and hit the demon race's ankle. Before the burly demon race could react, his tall and sturdy body fell to the ground involuntarily. With a bang, the ground was covered in dust. While he was still in a daze, Yang Kai slowly squatted in front of him, grabbed his collar with one hand and punched with the other. Asterisk hong hong hong. Asterisk in the blink of an eye, the burly demon race was beaten black and blue, his eyes seeing stars. Behind him, Xiao Wu covered her red lips with her small hands and looked at Yang Kai in shock. The onlookers of the demon race were also stunned. The original shouting stopped abruptly, but soon, more excited shouts rang out, "Kill him! Kill him! Smash his head and make his brains spill out! Dig out his demon heart! It will be delicious!" Yang Kai looked around with a strange expression. He suddenly remembered what Yu Meng had said before. In the demon territory, the strong were always right, and the weak were always wrong. The experience at this moment was the best portrayal and interpretation of this sentence. If they were in the star boundary, this kind of thing shouldn't have happened. Even if there were conflicts, there would be people watching the show, but they would never shout such bloody words and show such excited expressions. The burly demon race had already stopped moving. Yang Kai had punched him dozens of times, and even if he didn't use his full strength, it still took away half of his life. Getting up, Yang Kai sent the demon race flying with a kick and called out to Xiao Wu, "Let's go." When their eyes met, the corners of Yang Kai's eyes twitched. He found that Xiao Wu was looking at him with a look of worship. Not only her, the onlookers of the demon race were also looking at him with reverence. Many of the demon race even showed kind smiles at him. This was the demon territory. Chapter 34-43. Along the way, Yang Kai observed the unique customs of the demon territory and saw many strange things. However, although some things were good, they were useless to the cultivator in the star boundary. They were only effective to the creatures in the demon territory, which made him give up on buying them. Moreover, he didn't have any demon crystals on hand. After strolling for half a day, he arrived in front of a shop. According to Xiao Wu, there should be maps for sale here. There weren't any servants outside the door to welcome customers. Many demon race members were coming in and out, so the business was quite prosperous. After entering the shop, Yang Kai's gaze was immediately attracted by the exquisite and small things on the counters on both sides. Those things looked like chariots, but each one was only the size of a palm. A demon race member seemed to be very interested in those things and was looking at them. The shop's clerk accompanied him and enthusiastically introduced the functions of those little things, praising the things in the shop as if they were unparalleled in the world. After listening for a while, Yang Kai discovered that those things were really chariots. The demon race member took a fancy to one of the chariots. The clerk immediately took it out and held it with one hand. He poured his demon chi into it and threw it forward. With a whoosh, the chariot expanded in the wind and turned into something more than 6 meters long. Its shape was sinister and angular. At the top of the chariot was a lifelike tiger head with a bloody mouth. It was extremely terrifying. The demon race member walked around the chariot a few times and touched it here and there. He even sat on it and tried it himself. He revealed a satisfied expression and haggled with the clerk. In the end, both sides were sold. After sending off a customer, the clerk turned to look at Yang Kai and said with a smile, "Master, what do you want to buy?" Yang Kai pointed to the door and said, "Give me the thing that guy was looking at." He was interested in the chariot. It wasn't something that could be seen in the star boundary. However, he often came across it in the star territory. The shop assistant immediately took out a vehicle of the same model and enthusiastically introduced it. "Customer, you have good taste. This Tigerhead War Chariot is a new model that was released by our store this year. Its performance is much better than the old model, and its speed is also much faster. You can go wherever you want with it. These words were no different from what he had just said to the demon race, so young Kai was too lazy to pay attention to them. He snatched the tiger-headed war chariot from the shop assistant's hand, poured his emperor chi into it, and threw it forward like the shop assistant. The war chariot immediately enlarged and appeared in front of him. Young Kai was startled. He had just casually tested it and did not expect his emperor's chi to work on this thing. It seemed that this thing could be used by both the human race and the demon race. Young Kai withdrew his emperor chi and the shop assistant's cultivation was not high, so he naturally did not see anything wrong with it. He still enthusiastically said, "Customer, you may try it. If you are not satisfied with it, you can always try something else." Young Kai had the same idea and immediately sat on it. He found that the interior design of this war chariot was quite user-friendly, and it was very comfortable to sit inside. The only downside was that the space was a little small. At most, it could only accommodate 2 or 3 people. If one was a little bigger, it would be enough for one person to sit inside. After feeling it for a while, young Kai got up and climbed out, nodding. "How is the defense of this thing?" The shop assistant smiled and said, "Customer, rest assured, this thing is made of 12th order demon iron. Its defensive power is enough to pass through a realm gate and even withstand a full force blow from a demon king." Young Kai did not know what 12th order demon iron was, but since it could withstand a full force blow from a demon king, its defensive power should not be weak. He then asked, "What about its offensive power? How come I don't see any place that can be attacked? Could it be that there is some kind of special spirit array engraved on it?" As soon as this was said, the shop assistant's expression suddenly became strange as he looked at young Kai suspiciously. Behind him, Xiao Wu awkwardly walked up and whispered into young Kai's ear, "Master, this thing is not used for fighting, it is used for traveling. There are countless fragments within the demon race territory, and not every demon race knows the route to each of these fragments. This war chariot is engraved with the location of the realm gates and the route to each of these fragments, so as long as you set it in advance, you can arrive at your destination smoothly, saving you a lot of trouble. So it's a flight-type artifact." Young Kai suddenly realized, no wonder the shop assistant was looking at him strangely. Reaching out, he patted the shop assistant's shoulder and said seriously, "I was just joking." "Ha ha." The shop assistant's smile stiffened. Young Kai turned his head and looked around before lightly coughing. "Do you sell maps in this shop?" "Maps?" The shop assistant frowned. "What kind of maps does Master want to buy? What kind of maps do you have?" Young Kai asked in return. The shop assistant said, "We have maps of every Saint Venerable's territory, a total of 12 copies. Which Saint Venerable's territory does this customer want a map of?" There were 12 demon saints' territory in the demon race territory, so why was the map also divided into 12 copies? Young Kai said, "Do you not have a map that includes all of the fragments?" "We do, but the price?" The shop assistant smiled at young Kai. After what happened just now, he had a lot of doubts about this customer's purchasing power. He didn't even know what the war chariot was used for, and yet he came in. Clearly he didn't want to buy anything. "The price is not a problem," young Kai said calmly. The shop assistant hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Then please wait a moment, I will bring it to you." After saying that, he turned around and walked into the inner hall. After he left, Xiao Wu came over and carefully said, "Master, this servant forgot to ask you, how many magic crystals do you have?" "I don't have any." Young Kai glanced at her. Xiao Wu was stunned when she heard this, but she quickly took off the ring on her finger and said, "I have some magic crystals here, but I don't know if it will be enough." "Master, take it first." Young Kai smiled and pushed the ring back. "I have my ways." Since he dared to come, he naturally had his own plans. Seeing him like this, Xiao Wu didn't say anything else. She could only secretly pray that nothing bad would happen today, otherwise she wouldn't be able to escape punishment. Not long after, the shop assistant came back with a round black ball in his hand and a stand under it. Walking over, the shop assistant said, "Customer, this is the store's best map, please take a look and see if you are satisfied with it." Young Kai reached out to take the black ball and observed it for a moment. This thing was about the size of a human head and was quite heavy. He didn't know what material it was made of, But although this was the first time he had come into contact with this thing, it was similar to the mountain ripple diagram in the star boundary, so he immediately poured his divine sense into it. With a whoosh, the plate of a continent appeared in his divine sense, and a small black dot stood at a certain place on this continent, completely unremarkable. Yang Kai guessed that this small black dot represented his current location, and the continent that appeared in his knowledge sea should be the land under his feet. Phantom Continent. The name of each continent was also marked on this map. Only then did Yang Kai know that the continent under his feet was actually called the Phantom Continent, presumably because of Yu Ru Meng's name and the succubus demon's race. In the sky around the continent, there were 7 or 8 red dots. Yang Kai knew at a glance that these red dots represented the location of the realm gate, and each red dot had a thin white line connecting it to the distance. Yang Kai immersed himself in his divine sense and followed the thin white line, quickly finding another red dot and seeing another continent. After several attempts, Yang Kai figured out how to use this thing. This was a good thing, and it was exactly what he needed urgently. With this map, he would be able to grasp how to enter and exit the various fragments of the demon domain. Otherwise, if he wanted to go from one fragment to another, it would be like a blind man groping for an elephant. The shop assistant on the side said, "Customer, you can try to use your divine sense to call out the names of the 2 continents." Yang Kai looked up at him and decisively gave it a try, calling out the Phantom Continent and the Black Earth Continent in his heart. This Black Earth Continent was what he saw when he was groping around. It was very far from the Phantom Continent, separated by several fragments of the continent. But at this moment, starting from a certain red dot on the Phantom Continent, the connected white threads suddenly blossomed with a bright light. Like a burning flame, they spread all the way to another red dot, entered the neighboring continent, and then extended from another realm gate on this continent. In the blink of an eye, the closest route from the Phantom Continent to the Black Earth Continent was clear at a glance. If Yang Kai really wanted to go to the Black Earth Continent, he only needed to follow this route and pass through a few realm gates. Good, good, good. Yang Kai was full of praise. To be able to refine this thing, it was definitely a genius. To a human like him who had just arrived, this thing was more useful than anything else. How many magic crystals is this thing? Yang Kai held the black ball and didn't want to let go, so he turned to ask the shop assistant. He really wants to buy it. The shop assistant was a little surprised. He thought that Yang Kai didn't have much purchasing power, but who would have thought that he was such a big customer? He immediately smiled and said, 5 million high-rank magic crystals. Magic crystals were also divided into high, medium, and low rank, and they had the same conversion ratio as source crystals, 1 to 10. However, Yang Kai didn't have much of an idea of the so-called 5 million high-rank magic crystals, nor did he know what kind of wealth it was. He estimated that it was not much different from 5 million high-rank source crystals. 5 million high-rank source crystals was not a big deal to him, so he nodded and asked, "How about this tiger head chariot?" The shop assistant smiled even more happily. "This one only costs 1 million high-rank magic crystals. A total of 6 million high-rank source crystals." Yang Kai nodded, but Xiao Wu's face paled when she heard this. "That's too expensive." The shop assistant said, "Good things naturally have different prices. You can ask around in the holy city if there is a better chariot than this shop, or if there is a better map than this shop. If there is, these 2 things will be given to you as a gift." Chapter 34-44. I'll take it. Yang Kai was too lazy to haggle. Since the item was useful to him, he naturally had to buy it. The clerk heard this and immediately beamed with joy. "But I don't have any magic crystals," Yang Kai said again. The clerk's smile froze on his face as he looked at Yang Kai with a look that said, "Are you kidding me?" Yang Kai reached out and took out a mace that was half the height of a person. The mace emitted a dense demonic chi, scaring the clerk. He thought he was being robbed, but then he heard Yang Kai say, "Does your store accept this? I can use this as collateral." The clerk finally understood Yang Kai's intention. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said awkwardly, "Our store doesn't accept this kind of thing, but this demonic artifact seems to be of good quality. I can ask the shopkeeper for you." Yang Kai nodded. The clerk turned around and walked towards the counter. There was no one at the counter. The clerk walked over and stayed for a while before quickly returning. He looked at Yang Kai with a smile and said, "The shopkeeper invites you over for a chat." Yang Kai looked at him suspiciously and followed him to the counter. The clerk pointed below and introduced, "This is our shopkeeper." Yang Kai looked down and saw a short man under the counter. He was only half the height of a person and was completely blocked by the tall counter. No wonder he didn't see him before. He didn't know which race this short man was from. He had a strangely large head and short stature. He looked quite comical, but his eyes were full of shrewdness. He stared at Yang Kai and said, "I heard that this customer wants to use a demonic artifact as collateral in exchange for a map and a chariot." Yang Kai casually placed the mace on the counter and nodded, "That's right. How much is this worth?" The short man reached out and touched the mace. He released his divine sense and immediately raised his eyebrows. A king-grade demonic artifact. The so-called king-grade demonic artifact was probably a demonic artifact that could only be used by demon kings. Yang Kai had a lot of them, which were the spoils of war he collected from the demon kings he killed a few days ago. The items from the demon race could not be used by the cultivator in the astral plane. Roaring Tiger City collected a lot of them after every battle, so naturally Yang Kai also collected some. Now that he thought about it, he should have collected a lot of demonic crystals, but those things had a dense demonic chi and were of no use to him, so he didn't keep them. If he had known that this would happen, he would have prepared more magical crystals before coming here and saved himself the trouble of having to deal with the current situation. The short man carefully confirmed the quality and grade of the mace and gently nodded, "My humble store doesn't accept these things, but since it's a king-grade demonic artifact, I can make an exception. However, this thing is only worth 1 million high-grade demonic crystals, which is far from enough. Do you have anything else you can use as collateral?" If it weren't for this king-grade demonic artifact, he wouldn't have bothered with Yang Kai. If he could take out this thing as collateral, he must have other good things on him. If he bought it and sold it, he would definitely make more money. 1 million. Yang Kai turned his head and looked at Xiao Wu. He really didn't know much about the market in the demonic territory, so the only person he could ask for advice was this maidservant he brought with him. Xiao Wu secretly transmitted her voice, "It's a little lower. Master, you can raise the price a little." If it was a little lower, then it was acceptable. Yang Kai raised his hand again, and with a few clangs, 4 or 5 demonic artifacts of different shapes appeared in front of him. He looked down at the short man and said, "Is this enough?" The shopkeeper and the shop assistant beside him were all stunned. All of the demonic treasures that had suddenly appeared were filled with dense demonic chi. They were not inferior to the spiked club from before. In fact, they were even superior. In other words, these were all king-grade demonic artifact. Only a demon king could use a king-grade demonic artifact. This guy in front of them took out so many at once, so they obviously didn't belong to him. He must have killed other demon kings and snatched them. Each demonic artifact represented a demon king. In an instant, the short man and the shop assistant looked at Yang Kai with a different expression. They felt a bloody aura coming from him. The short man didn't dare to be negligent and quickly said, "Master, please wait a moment. Let me take a look first." After appraising them, they were all king-grade demonic artifacts without a doubt. Each of them was worth at least 1 million high-grade demonic crystals. Perhaps knowing that Yang Kai wasn't someone to be trifled with, the short man even took the initiative to raise the price of 3 of the demonic artifacts. The 6 demonic artifacts came to a total of 6.9 million high-grade demonic crystals. It was enough to pawn the map and the tiger-headed war chariot. After a short while, Yang Kai brought Xiao Wu out of the shop. The map and the tiger-headed war chariot had already been stored in the space ring. He was holding another space ring in his hand, which contained the extra 900,000 high-grade demonic crystals. This trip was mainly for the map. Now that he had achieved his goal, Yang Kai didn't have anything else to buy. While strolling around with Xiao Wu, Yang Kai held the map in his hand and used his divine sense to familiarize himself with the situation in the demon territory. His divine sense shuttled through the map, and the names of the continents flashed before his eyes. Yang Kai silently memorized them, thinking that it was time to inquire about the great emperors of the Bright Moon continent. Since Heaven's revelations and the others wanted him to rescue the great emperors of the Bright Moon continent, he first had to figure out where they were now. Only then would it be easier for him to carry out his plan. Just as he was thinking about this, a wave of cheers suddenly rang out in his ears. The sound was so loud that Yang Kai couldn't help but be attracted to it. Looking up, he saw a huge semicircular building not far away. It stood on the ground of the holy city, where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. There were several demon race guards at the entrance, and the cheers from before had come from this building. It was very lively. What is that place? Yang Kai pointed at the semicircular building and asked. The buildings he had seen before weren't big, but this building occupied such a vast area. It obviously had a big background. Blood Arena. Xiao Wu pursed her lips and glanced over there. A trace of fear flashed in her eyes. She seemed to be afraid of that place. What is it? Yang Kai asked curiously. Xiao Wu explained, it's a place where many powerful existences compete for supremacy. The winner can win the prize provided by the blood fighting arena, and the loser can lose their life. There are prizes to be won. Yang Kai clicked his tongue in wonder. Xiao Wu nodded, yes, and most of the time, the prizes are very generous. Oh right, you can also bet in there. Some people get rich overnight, and some people go bankrupt. You can also bet. Yang Kai's eyes suddenly lit up. Just now, he had spent 6 million high-grade magic crystals to buy the map and the tiger-head chariot, and 6,900,000 high-grade magic crystals to pawn off several magic treasures. Now, he only had 900,000 high-grade magic crystals left. He would certainly stay in the demon territory for a long time, and it would be difficult to do things without magic crystals. He was just thinking about how to get more magic crystals, but he didn't expect that there would be a ready-made method. Let's go in and take a look. Yang Kai immediately became interested and led Xiao Wu to the blood arena. At the entrance, the guard blocked the way. If one wanted to enter the blood arena, they naturally had to pay an entrance fee. The fights inside were fierce, day and night, and it was impossible to let people watch for free. The entrance fee was one of the income of the blood arena. 10,000 high-grade magic crystals per person, it was really not a place that ordinary people could enter. Fortunately, Yang Kai just got some magic crystals, otherwise, he would have to rely on Xiao Wu's soft rice. After paying the entrance fee, he received 2 number plates and went straight inside. It was the first time for Xiao Wu to enter such a place, so she couldn't help but be a little nervous, and followed Yang Kai closely. After passing through a long corridor, the two suddenly entered a huge inner space. It was a circular field that covered an area of dozens of acres, and snowflakes fluttered in the air. What surprised Yang Kai was that there were several towering peaks in the field, and the peaks were rugged. The spectator seats were arranged in a trapezoidal shape, and went up step by step. Roughly speaking, this place could accommodate at least 40,000 to 50,000 people to watch the fight at the same time. At this moment, although the spectator seats couldn't be said to be overcrowded, 70 to 80% of the seats were occupied. Each person had to pay an entrance fee of 10,000 high-grade magic crystals, so 70 to 80% of the people here would earn several hundred million. Before this, Yang Kai was still wondering what kind of prizes this blood-fighting arena would provide, and how he could make a profit, but now he knew that this was absolutely a sure way to make a profit. If it was just this, it would have been fine, but what surprised Yang Kai even more was that the space inside the blood-fighting arena was obviously different, because the scene inside was actually 10 times smaller than normal. In other words, the blood-fighting arena that he saw before him might actually be a few hundred acres, or even 1,000 acres. It was only because of some special reasons that it was reduced in size. Space folding? Yang Kai's eyes narrowed. Didn't Yu Ruming say that there was no demon race in the demon territory that was proficient in the law of space? Then who compressed the space of the blood-fighting arena into this place? He turned his head and asked Xiao Wu, and then he found out that it wasn't as he thought. The space in the blood-fighting arena was originally a small fragment of a continent. Yu Ruming had used the great divine technique to move it here, and then used a formation master to set up a formation to create such an effect. Damn it, I knew this blood-fighting arena had a great background. It turned out that it was Yu Rumeng who set it up. She is the most powerful person in the Phantom Continent, so it's not surprising that she set up such a thing. Xiao Wu continued. It's the first time I've come here as well. But I heard that there are a few tens of different environments and terrains in the blood-fighting arena to choose from. So long as the formation is activated, it can be changed. Oh! Yang Kai raised his eyebrows when he heard this. Did this mean that the snowy scenery before him wasn't unchanging? It could even be changed to other environments and venues? If this was the case, then the variables in the blood-fighting arena would be great. If the strength of the two parties was equal, and a certain environment or terrain was advantageous to one party, then that party would undoubtedly have a great advantage. Just as the two of them were talking, a tsunami of cheers came from the spectator seats again. The outcome of the battle in the blood-fighting arena had been decided. Chapter 34-45. Most of the time, the victory or defeat in the blood-fighting arena would end with the death of one side. At this moment, the winner of the demon race was holding a bloody head and a beating demon heart in his hand. He stood on a mountain peak and spun in circles, letting the spectators admire his heroic appearance. This bloody and cruel scene seemed to be very popular with the demon race, and their cheers grew louder and louder. After a long time, the winner of the demon race stuffed the beating demon heart into his mouth and took a big bite, as if he was eating delicious food. His expression was happy, and the corners of his mouth were full of blood. The center of the arena suddenly turned dark, and nothing could be seen. At this time, the cheers gradually subsided, but no one was surprised. Yang Kai also did as the Romans did, and quietly observed the changes. He and Xiao Wu found their seats and sat down. While waiting, some women wearing revealing clothes and holding trays shuttled back and forth among the spectators. The trays were full of cups filled with a dark red liquid. It was unknown what it was, but Yang Kai saw that many of the demon race called these women, so he took out magic crystals to buy it and drank happily. Out of curiosity, he also bought a cup, spending 1,000 high-grade magic crystals. After tasting it, there was a bloody taste, so he turned his head and asked Xiao Wu, "What is this?" Xiao Wu said with a pale face, "Some women will be locked up and fed some special things when they make a mistake. After a few years, their blood will become different from the others. After releasing the blood and refining it, it will be done." She didn't dare to continue, but Yang Kai knew what she was going to say. He nodded slightly. It was an eye-opener. Saying so, he drank the thing in his hand in one gulp, and showed an expression of wanting more. Xiao Wu was dumbfounded. Wasn't this person in front of her a human? How could he be as bloodthirsty as the demon race? After waiting quietly for a moment, the central arena below suddenly lit up again. However, it wasn't an environment of ice and snow this time. Instead, it was an arena covered in yellow sand. Sure enough, it was as Xiao Wu had said before. The blood-fighting arena was set up with a miraculous formation. So long as the formation was activated, it could be changed freely. A demon king flew high up in the sky. With an excited expression, he cast a spell and shouted, "The next battle is between Poison Wasp and Wild Python. If Poison Wasp wins this battle, he will have won 10 consecutive victories in the blood-fighting arena. He will also win the generous rewards provided by the blood-fighting arena. Poison Bee is very experienced, and his attacks are very cunning. Although Wild Python has only fought 3 battles in the blood-fighting arena, he can't be underestimated. He crushed his opponents in all 3 battles. Let's wait and see who is stronger in this battle." As soon as he finished speaking, a demon race walked up from both sides of the blood-fighting arena. The 2 demon race were both demon king-level existences. Demonic chi surged from their bodies. There was little difference in their cultivations. One was thin and small while the other was tall and sturdy, forming an extremely sharp contrast. The desert environment was unobstructed at a glance. The 2 demon kings looked at each other across the arena. Their eyes were filled with cold light and clear killing intent. However, neither of them showed any intention of attacking. Instead, they were quietly waiting for something. In the audience, many people were busy. They all took out their number plates and activated them with their divine senses. Yang Kai was curious. Xiao Wu explained, they should be betting. If master wants to bet, you only need to pour your divine sense into the number plate. After the bet is done, the battle over there should begin. So that's how it is. Yang Kai immediately immersed his divine sense into the number plate. Sure enough, he found that the information inside the number plate had changed. There was now an option to bet. However, judging from the odds, the blood-fighting arena was obviously more optimistic about Poisonous Bee, who had almost won 10 matches in a row, because the odds were only 2-1. On the contrary, Wild Python's odds were 1-1. In addition, there was also Yang Kai's personal betting information, but it was all 0 at the moment. Yang Kai only had 900,000 demon crystals on hand. As a newcomer, he didn't know which of the two was stronger. Naturally, he wasn't prepared to bet and planned to watch for a while. At the very least, he had to understand the rules here. After a short while, the audience should have finished betting on the demon race. Those who didn't bet didn't have any intention of doing so, so there was no need to wait. 2 gong sounds rang out. The battle was about to begin. When the sound fell, the 2 demon kings had already rushed towards the central area of the sand demons. After a dozen breaths of time, they were already engaged in battle. Just as the host of the demon race had said before, Poisonous Bee was very experienced in battle. His attacks were extremely crafty, and coupled with his nimble figure, he was able to suppress the burly wild python. However, this wild python should be a stone demon. He had copper skin and iron bones, and his defense was outstanding. He only defended and didn't attack. Poisonous Bee's scattered attacks had no effect on him at all. For a time, the two were locked in a fierce battle. The battle between the 2 demon kings was extremely intense. Demonic chi surged and vibrated, causing the sand and stones in the central area to fly. However, after watching for a while, Yang Kai understood. Although the wild python's defense was good, his opponent's figure was too agile. He couldn't hit him at all. On the contrary, his opponent was constantly wearing down his strength and demonic chi. If he didn't have a trump card, the result would be worrying. This battle lasted for half an hour. Seeing that the wild python was about to collapse, Poisonous Bee rashly rushed forward, flipping the dagger in his hand, preparing to kill. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the wild python's body bloomed with a golden light, instantly enveloping an area of 1,000 feet. Poison Bee's body stiffened abruptly, revealing a slight flaw. The wild python grinned and strode forward, the thick demonic artifact in his hand smashing down on Poisonous Bee's head, looking as if the outcome was already decided. Poisonous Bee was also smiling. Just as the demonic artifact was about to hit him, his figure suddenly flickered and split into 2, 2 into 4, 4 into 8, surrounding the wild python. The 8 figures simultaneously flashed to the center and once again merged into one. The scene seemed to be frozen at this moment. Poisonous Bee's figure reappeared on the side, his back facing the wild python, slowly swinging the dagger in his hand. The wild python was still in an attacking posture, but its body had already stiffened in place. The smile on its face didn't have time to disappear, and its eyes were full of disbelief. With a rumble, its burly body fell to the sand, sending sand flying everywhere. There was no injury, but there was no sign of life. There was an uproar in the audience. The devils who bet on the right bet were naturally beaming with joy. After all, they won the magic crystals, while the devils who lost the magic crystals had ugly expressions. They cursed loudly. If it wasn't for the fact that the python was already dead, they would have rushed up and torn it into pieces to vent the hatred in their hearts. The central field darkened again, and a new round of battle began. The strength of the 2 sides in each battle was about the same, at least in the same realm. After all, if the strength gap was too big, there was nothing to see. Every round, there were countless demon race bets, but with the blood-fighting arena adjusting the odds, the biggest winner could only be the blood-fighting arena. This place was really a money tree. Yang Kai secretly admired Yu Meng. He didn't know how rich this woman was. After watching several rounds like this, Yang Kai was also familiar with the rules here, so he didn't wait any longer. In the next few battles, he also placed a few bets. He thought that his eyesight was good, But he didn't expect that he would suffer a big loss this time. He was counting on the hundreds of thousands of demonic crystals on him to make a lot of money, but who knew that he would lose it all after a few rounds? He was so angry that he almost cursed. If he could properly perceive the situation of the two sides in the battle, Yang Kai estimated that he wouldn't have lost so miserably. The main reason was that he couldn't check the level of the two people in the battle because of the isolation of the array. He could only observe with his naked eyes. After making one or two mistakes, there was nothing to be gained. The plan to earn demonic crystals had failed, so Yang Kai didn't want to stay in this place any longer. He called Xiao Wu and prepared to leave. Xiao Wu didn't seem to like this place, so when she saw that he was leaving, she was naturally happy to follow him. Although the bets had been placed before, no one came to collect the demonic crystals. This was because when a guest left the blood-fighting arena, their number plate would be taken back. The number plate recorded all the information of the bets. The winner and loser could be seen at a glance. If they lost, they just had to pay the demonic crystals to the blood-fighting arena before leaving. If they won, it was the same. No one dared to go back on their words in the blood-fighting arena, unless they didn't want to live. Yang Kai now had less than 880,000 demonic crystals left. The deficit in his number plate was also this amount, so it was just enough to settle the debt. However, the two had only taken a few steps when the central field lit up again. At this time, a burst of surprise suddenly came from the surrounding audience, as if they had seen something incredible. Yang Kai casually turned his head and glanced in that direction. His eyes suddenly widened, and his footsteps stopped. He stared at the central field without blinking. Xiao Wu, who was behind him, didn't pay attention and directly bumped into his back. She immediately apologized in fear. Yang Kai waved his hand at her, indicating that it was okay. Then, he carefully looked at the figure in the central field. Yes, Yu Meng was there. No, that wasn't Yu Meng, that was Li Shiqing. Yu Meng had been using Li Shiqing's appearance in the star boundary, so Yang Kai was naturally not unfamiliar with this appearance. At this time, when he suddenly saw this face in the central field, he was in a daze for a moment and thought that it was Yu Meng. Only after he reacted did he realize that it was Li Shiqing. Yang Kai had asked Yu Meng about Li Shiqing's whereabouts before, but Yu Meng didn't tell him. Now, he understood that this woman was actually in the demon territory. Moreover, she was in the blood-fighting arena of the Phantom Continent. He had never come in contact with the real Li Shiqing. They didn't know each other, but this woman was the disciple of the great emperors of the Flower Shadow. Since he had encountered her in the demon territory, he naturally couldn't just ignore her. But what was this scene in front of him? Could it be that the demon race wanted Li Shiqing to participate in the blood-fighting arena? Chapter 3446. Yu Meng disguised herself as Li Shiqing as a second-order Emperor Realm Master, so the real Li Shiqing was naturally at this level as well. Otherwise, how could she have deceived the great emperors like the Flower Shadow Realm? Her cultivation wasn't bad, but this was the demon territory after all. Li Shiqing didn't have the ability to ignore the demonic chi's corrosion like Yang Kai, so how could she be a match for the other demon kings in the blood-fighting arena? At this moment, Li Shiqing was standing quietly beside the demon king. It seemed that her cultivation wasn't restricted, nor was there any seal placed on her, but she didn't move at all. Her eyes were closed, and Emperor Qi flickered on the surface of her body. Obviously, she was resisting the corrosion of the demonic Qi. If she didn't do so, it was very likely that she would become a demon in a very short time. No one knew how long she had been resisting like this, but she looked a little tired. At the center of the arena, the demon king who brought Li Shiqing up smiled and said, "I believe that many of you have already noticed that this woman is different from the rest." Yes, this woman is indeed different, because this woman is a human from the star boundary. As soon as this statement came out, the entire arena went into an uproar. Because Li Shiqing had been constantly urging her Emperor Qi to resist the demonic Qi, many Demon King level masters had already noticed some clues, but they didn't dare to be too sure. At this moment, after hearing the Demon King's words, they realized that this woman was really a human. This was a rare species. Because the demon territory was filled with world principles and demonic chi, even if a human really came here, it was impossible for them to come out unscathed. The biggest possibility was that they would become the demon race and become a demon. But looking at Li Shiqing's appearance, although she looked tired, it was obvious that she hadn't lost her mind. In addition, Li Shiqing's appearance and figure were excellent, so she was naturally very attractive to many members of the demon race. It is said that this woman has a second-order Emperor realm cultivation in the star boundary, which is equivalent to a mid-rank demon king here. The demon king paused for a moment before suddenly raising his voice. The prize for the next blood battle will be this woman. If anyone can win in the next blood battle, this king can take this woman away. This king, has never tasted a human master before. Li Shiqing's eyelashes trembled as a look of sadness appeared on her face. To think that she was now a prize in the demon race's blood arena. Such treatment was something she didn't even dare to imagine in the past. She secretly decided that if things got out of hand, she would immediately sever her own heart vein. She would rather die than bring shame her master. She was blood. Li. A die Li. Just as the Demon King had said, none of the members of the demon race had tasted a human master before. Li Shiqing's appearance and figure were good, and her cultivation was high. If they could really win, it would be a great glory. In an instant, the crowd of demons was excited, and the ghosts in the audience were crying and howling. The Demon King continued, "There are no rules in this blood battle. It will be a battle of chaos. Anyone who signed up can participate, as long as they can survive until the end. I will give everyone an incense stick worth of time to prepare. There will be no more waiting after that." After saying this, he grabbed Li Shiqing's arm and dragged her away, disappearing from sight. As soon as he left, many members of the demon race got up from the audience and rushed in a certain direction. Those members of the demon race were all Demon King level powerhouses. If one's cultivation wasn't at the level of a Demon King, they wouldn't have the qualifications to participate in this blood battle. This blood battle was different from the previous blood battles. In the previous blood battles, the blood arena would arrange opponents with similar cultivation levels. This time, Li Shiqing was the prize. If one's cultivation was lower, they would only be slaughtered. However, since it was a battle of chaos this time, they could take advantage of the situation. Yang Kai turned his head to look at Xiao Wu and asked, "Where do we sign up?" Xiao Wu was stunned for a moment, then pointed in a direction and said, "It should be over there." Yang Kai followed her finger and found that the group of demon kings was gathered in that direction. Without hesitation, he hurriedly rushed over. He had just been thinking about how to rescue Li Shiqing if he ran into her here, but he hadn't expected that the blood arena would take the initiative to provide him with such an opportunity. As long as he won, he would be able to obtain this beauty. This was a ready-made method. The registration area was filled with a sea of people, and there was no order to speak of. The demon kings with higher cultivations tried their best to rush in, while those with weaker cultivations could only temporarily avoid them. Fortunately, private fights were not allowed in the blood arena, otherwise, this place would likely have become a chaotic mess. Yang Kai expended a great deal of effort to squeeze to the front, then reached out and slapped the table at the registration area. "I'll sign up." The demon king in charge of the registration glanced up at him, a strange light flashing across his eyes as he nodded. 100,000 demon crystals. Yang Kai bared his teeth and took out 100,000 demon crystals as a registration fee from his space ring. This registration fee wasn't for him alone. All the demon kings who had signed up before had paid up, and Yang Kai had also noticed this, so he was naturally prepared. It was just that he had bet all the demon crystals he had on him before, so if he lost 100,000 demon crystals, he definitely wouldn't be able to settle the bill. He didn't know if he would be able to place a bet later, but if he could, he would be able to place a bet on himself and find a way to get some demon crystals back. The demon race accepted the demon crystals and recorded Yang Kai's number plate and cultivation before calling it a day. After he left, the demon race in charge of the registration glanced up at his back again before taking out an object and pinching it in his hand. In the depths of the blood fighting arena, in a side room, A demon race was sitting on a chair with narrowed eyes and a deep aura. Beside him was a woman from the demon race, who was serving him wholeheartedly. On the other side, a high-rank demon king listened carefully before turning around and saying, "Master, that guy signed up." The demon race on the chair gently nodded and didn't say anything else. The high-rank demon king hesitated for a moment before asking, "Why does Master pay so much attention to that guy? Is there something special about him?" Originally, the blood-fighting arena didn't have this chaotic battle today, nor did the human woman serve as a prize. However, the master had suddenly rushed over and brought the human woman with him, instructing him to hold this event and then telling him to pay attention to that strange-looking guy. Now that he thought about it, the master had deliberately used the human woman as bait to attract that guy to sign up and participate in the chaotic battle. However, how could the master be so sure that that guy would definitely participate? The demon race on the chair looked up at him, causing the high-rank demon king's heart to tremble. He thought that he had asked the wrong question and hurriedly lowered his head. Just as he was in fear and trepidation, the demon race on the chair suddenly stood up and walked out with large strides. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared and a cold voice was heard, "Think of a way to kill him." The demon king was stunned for a moment before he respectfully said, "Yes, Master, do you know that woman?" Xiao Wu looked at Yang Kai and asked. If they didn't know each other, why would Yang Kai suddenly sign up for this chaotic battle? They were both humans, so the possibility of them knowing each other was very high. "You can say that." Yang Kai didn't explain further. "Master, you shouldn't have signed up." Xiao Wu was a bit anxious. Those demon kings are very savage. "What if something happened to you?" Yang Kai smiled at her. "Don't worry, nothing will happen to me. But for them, it's better if they don't be too surprised." Xiao Wu said, "How about we leave now? Otherwise, if the saint finds out and blames us, this servant will definitely die without a burial place." Yang Kai shook his head. "We can't leave. I just paid 100,000 magic crystals to sign up. If we can't settle this debt, the two of us can't leave the blood arena." When Xiao Wu heard this, her face turned green. Although she had some magic crystals on her, she didn't have 100,000 magic crystals. Even if she took out all of them, she still wouldn't be able to settle this debt. Yang Kai said again, "We should be able to place a bet later. Help me place a bet." Xiao Wu was shocked. "Place a bet? But we don't have any magic crystals." Yang Kai stretched out his hand and knocked her head. "You are stupid. In any case, this is the account before leaving. Who knows if you have any magic crystals on you? As long as we win, we can just collect the magic crystals. Who will ask us for magic crystals?" Xiao Wu wanted to say that it wasn't that the demon race hadn't done this before, but if they lost, they would usually end up in a miserable state. But now that things had come to this, there was no other way. She could only break the pot and place all of her hopes on the next bet. After hesitating for a moment, she asked, "Do you want to bet on the master himself?" Yang Kai said confidently, "Of course. Otherwise, who else can I bet on?" "How much?" 1,000. No, I bet 100 million magic crystals." 100 million? Xiao Wu's mouth was slightly open as she stood there dumbfounded. At this time, the center of the arena lit up and the demon race appeared again. He cast a spell and shouted, "The time has come. All applicants will come to the arena immediately. Those who haven't come to the arena before the array is activated will be considered as having forfeited." As soon as he finished speaking, figures shot out from the audience and landed in the center of the arena. Yang Kai reminded Xiao Wu, "Remember to place your bet." He leaped into the air and rushed into a layer of light screen in the blink of an eye. Then, he landed on a spacious field. Chapter 34-47. Although she was worried, Xiao Wu still remembered Yang Kai's previous instructions. She took out her number plate and used her divine sense to check it. Sure enough, she saw that there was information about the bets for this battle. The bets this time were quite different from the previous bets. Before, there were only 2 choices, but this time, there were as many as 70 to 80 choices. In other words, there were 70 demon race powerhouses in the blood-fighting arena at this moment, and they were basically all existences at the level of a demon king. Row after row, every participant of the demon race had their own number, followed by a simple introduction of their cultivation base. Those who were famous even had their own nicknames. For example, Poison Bee, who had won the blood-fighting arena earlier, was in the list. Yang Kai naturally didn't have any nicknames. Xiao Wu browsed through the list and quickly found the location of Yang Kai's number plate. She glanced at the odds behind it and couldn't help but be startled, thinking that her eyes were playing tricks on her. After taking a closer look, she found that she wasn't mistaken. Yang Kai's odds were shockingly as high as 1 to 10. She couldn't help but feel that this was a little strange, because the odds were really a little too high. It seemed very abnormal. Looking at the odds of the other demon race, they were all within the normal range. There were a few that had odds of 1 to 10, but those few demon race powerhouses were all at the demon commander level. In such a chaotic battle, it was obviously impossible for them to survive until the end. As for the demon king level, the odds were basically in the range of 1 to 1, with the highest being 1 to 2. However, the information behind Yang Kai's number plate was that of a mid-rank demon king. What was going on? Such unreasonable odds were as if the blood-fighting arena was certain that Yang Kai would die without a doubt, and deliberately raised the odds to attract people to place their bets. Xiao Wu couldn't understand it for a moment, but this wasn't the time for her to think too much. If she delayed any longer, the betting time would be over. Gritting her teeth and closing her eyes, she followed Yang Kai's instructions and placed a bet of 100 million behind his number plate. After doing all this, Xiao Wu was completely exhausted, as if all her strength had left her body. She had never been so stimulated in her entire life. Inside the blood arena, Yang Kai stood there calmly, his gaze sweeping over the several demon kings gathered around him. With a sweep of his divine perception, he was able to clearly see through their backgrounds. 4 low-grade demon kings, 1 mid-grade demon king. In terms of the human race's cultivation division, there were 4 First-Order Emperor Realm Masters and 1 Second-Order Emperor Realm Master. He really didn't know where they got the confidence to surround him. Yang Kai crossed his arms and pressed them down on his abdomen. He stretched his neck and moved his shoulders. He looked like he was ready for a big fight. The Demon King looked at him with a sinister smile, as if they were looking at a dead man. A low-grade Demon King on the left immediately rushed towards Yang Kai. It seemed that he was angered by Yang Kai's provocation and wanted to let Yang Kai know the price of his arrogance. He didn't want to waste any time and grinned maliciously. Demonic chi erupted from his body and he arrived in front of Yang Kai in a few steps. He punched out, the wind from his fist whistling as a pitch-black ball condensed in front of his fist and headed straight for Yang Kai's chest. A destructive aura spread out as the Demon King laughed complacently. Yang Kai also punched out, but there wasn't the slightest fluctuation of power, as if he was just casually throwing a punch. Hong. The smile on the Demon King's face stiffened in an instant, and an inconceivable look appeared in his eyes. An unimaginable sense of crisis enveloped his whole body, and his perception was magnified to the limit in an instant. Inexplicably, he felt that everything around him had become incomparably slow. He could even clearly see that his fist had been smashed to pieces by the guy in front of him. Pieces of flesh and broken bones flew everywhere, and the violent power did not stop, crushing his arm like dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. His entire arm was crushed inch by inch and smashed into his chest with a loud bang. A bloody mist exploded, and the Demon King was nowhere to be seen. In a single exchange, this low-grade Demon King had been smashed to pieces by Yang Kai. No one was able to react in time. The other 4 Demon Kings were still standing to the side, preparing to observe Yang Kai's strength before making any plans. However, Yang Kai had already rushed out from the bloody mist, and his body was wrapped in a bone-chilling killing intent. In a flash, he arrived in front of another low-grade Demon King. The same punch was thrown out, and without even looking, he turned around and rushed to the side, throwing another punch at the 3rd low-grade Demon King. Only when this punch hit the Demon King did the 2nd Demon King's body suddenly burst apart. The remaining 2 Demon Kings were overwhelmed with shock, almost not daring to believe their eyes. Just as they were hesitating, the 3rd Demon King that had been hit by Yang Kai had already followed in the footsteps of his 2 companions. Retreat, retreat quickly. The remaining two demon kings instinctively wanted to increase the distance between them and Yang Kai. Yang Kai suddenly turned around, grinning maliciously at the two of them, causing their hairs to stand on end. His hands formed into claws, and he grabbed towards the two of them. Under the fluctuations of the law of space, the two retreating figures were immediately fixed in place, as if there were invisible shackles binding them, making it impossible for them to move. Not only that, the two demon kings were pulled towards Yang Kai by a powerful force. For a moment, they looked around blankly, struggling with all their might. However, what made them feel incomparably desperate was that they were unable to break free, and could only watch as they got closer and closer to that death god. Yang Kai's body leaned back slightly, and his arms swung back. His entire body was like a drawn bow, and his hands formed into fists as he punched forward. Twin dragons emerge from the sea. With two booming sounds, almost at the same time, the two fists smashed into the bodies of the two remaining demon kings. At this moment, there was no difference between a mid-rank demon king and a low-rank demon king. Their bodies instantly exploded, and a rain of blood and bits of flesh fell to the ground. The ground beneath their feet became a complete mess. In the audience stands, many demon race members saw this shocking scene, and at this moment, they let out thunderous cheers, and their expressions became incomparably excited. Their abnormalities attracted the attention of others, and more demon race members began to pay attention to the situation on Yang Kai's side. Although these demon race members didn't see the scene of Yang Kai wantonly crushing and slaughtering 5 demon kings by himself, the remnants of the battlefield showed that a bloody battle had erupted here a moment ago. Moreover, it was definitely not a one-on-one fight, because the traces on the scene were definitely not left behind by a single person. The one who was still alive was undoubtedly the only survivor, and this made the demon race members extremely surprised. After all, the chaotic battle had only started for less than 3 breaths of time, so how could so many demon kings have died all of a sudden? After a little investigation, they found out about the previous situation, and immediately became extremely shocked. They placed more of their attention on Yang Kai's side, wanting to see if this guy really had 3 heads and 6 arms, and how he could kill 5 demon kings by himself. There were even some demon race members who began to check their own number plates, and found Yang Kai's information. After discovering the frightening odds of 1 to 10, they were extremely vexed. If they knew this guy was so strong, they would have bet on him without any hesitation. Who knows, they might have become rich overnight. In the corner of the audience stands, Xiao Wu covered her eyes with both hands, trembling. She didn't dare to look at the scene in the blood arena. If Yang Kai died here today, then her end would definitely not be good. Being directly executed would be the best result, and the most likely result would be that even her soul would be extracted and tortured day and night, living a life worse than death. Even when cheers came from all around, she still didn't dare to let go of her hands, afraid that she would see the scene she was worried about. A hand lightly patted her shoulder. It was a demon race member sitting behind her who kindly reminded her, "Hey, your master isn't dead." Not dead. Xiao Wu was startled for a moment, and slowly opened her hands. She narrowed her eyes and fearfully looked into the blood arena. Sure enough, she saw Yang Kai standing there, safe and sound. However, the few demon kings who had gathered around him previously had disappeared without a trace. Where were those demon kings? Before the chaotic battle started, there were clearly a few demon kings in the vicinity. Xiao Wu couldn't help but be a little absent-minded. As if seeing her doubts, the demon race member sitting behind her said, "Those guys were all killed by your master." Xiao Wu was even more surprised. Those were 5 demon kings, and they were all killed by the master so quickly. She turned her head and looked at the demon race member sitting behind her with a look of disbelief. She really couldn't believe it, and didn't dare to believe it. The demon race member sitting behind her should only be a demon commander. When he saw the sinister scar on Xiao Wu's face, he was also startled, but he quickly smiled and said, "What is the background of your master? He seems to be quite powerful." Xiao Wu slowly shook her head. She naturally wouldn't answer this question. The demon race member seemed to be very familiar with her, and he opened his mouth again. "Do you think he will win in the end?" "I don't know. I hope he can last until the end." The demon commander's eyes lit up. He stared at Yang Kai without blinking and said with an excited expression, "If he can live until the end, I will be rich." Xiao Wu frowned and said, "What does that have to do with you?" The demon commander chuckled, "Because I bet 2 million demon crystals on him." So that was the case. Xiao Wu was speechless for a moment. No wonder this guy was so concerned about the master. It turned out that he had bet on him. Thinking about it carefully, it was possible that he had overheard the conversation between Yang Kai and her. Otherwise, which demon commander would be willing to bet so many demon crystals on such a fishy betting rate? If he won, he would have 20 million demon crystals, which would be enough to buy many king-grade demon artifacts. For a demon commander, this was tantamount to a huge fortune. In fact, this demon commander had indeed overheard the conversation between Yang Kai and Xiao Wu, which was why he had bet on him. In his opinion, since Yang Kai dared to bet 100 million demon crystals on him, it meant that he had a lot of confidence. Therefore, he made a prompt decision and bet all the demon crystals he could afford. Originally, he was a little worried about the gains and losses, wondering if he had been too impulsive. A 1-to-10 ratio had never appeared in the bloodfighting arena before. Since the bloodfighting arena dared to set such odds, it meant that they were confident that Yang Kai wouldn't survive until the end. But when he saw Yang Kai's terrifying strength at the beginning of the match, the demon commander smiled like a blooming flower. With such strength, an ordinary demon king wouldn't be a match for him. Chapter 34-48. Inside the blood arena, Yang Kai whistled and looked down at his feet. At some point, a withered hand had appeared at his ankle. Demon Chi was surging in the palm as it tried to grab him, but the withered hand's owner seemed to have noticed that something was wrong and froze at Yang Kai's feet, not moving in the slightest. When Yang Kai looked over, the hand immediately retracted back into the ground and disappeared without a trace. Yang Kai grinned fiercely as he lifted his foot and stomped the ground. Catcher, where his foot landed, a huge crack suddenly appeared and spread forward like a snake coming out of a hole, twisting and turning at an extremely fast speed. A muffled groan came from below, followed by a thin figure at the very front of the crack. Sand and dust swirled around his body, making it impossible to see his face clearly. This was a sand demon. At some point in time, he had been hiding under Yang Kai's feet, seemingly waiting for an opportunity to deliver a fatal blow to Yang Kai. But the 5 demon kings had died too quickly, giving him no opportunity to strike. Now that he had been forced to reveal himself, his greatest advantage was gone. As soon as the sand demon appeared, he madly rushed in a certain direction, the sand and dust swirling around his body shaking violently. Wrapped in rolling demon chi, the sand and gravel that blotted out the sky flew towards Yang Kai. Every grain of sand was the result of countless years of tempering with his own demon chi, so their lethality was not inferior to the all-out attack of a peak demon commander. With so many grains of sand attacking together, even a demon king would have to retreat. The sound of something tearing through the air rang out incessantly. The sand demon glanced back and immediately frowned. Because there was no one behind him, his desperate counterattack had hit nothing but air. Just as he was puzzled, a dense aura suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking his path. The sand demon turned pale with fright and turned back to look, only to see Yang Kai, who should have been behind him, standing in front of him, looking at him with a playful expression. He was only 10 meters away from him. When, before he could even think about it, he had already reacted instinctively. His entire body shook as he came to a halt, and with a quick sweep, he was about to escape from Yang Kai's side. Yang Kai reached out his hand and gently grabbed in his direction, as if he was pinching a fly. In the next moment, the sand demon felt his neck being choked by a large hand. He couldn't breathe properly, and his whole body was involuntarily lifted in front of Yang Kai. His feet left the ground, and he was suspended high in the air. He struggled with all his might, but as the violent emperor chi poured into his body, he instantly lost the strength to resist. Only at this moment did the sand devil realize that Yang Kai's power was somewhat different. What poured into his body was not demon chi, but more like the legendary emperor chi of the human race. The sand devil's eyes widened as he stared at Yang Kai incredulously. Could it be that this guy was a human? Before he could finish his thought, the power that had surged into his body began to boil, destroying his internal organs and destroying his flesh and bones. An extremely painful expression appeared on the sand demon's face, and after a few breaths, he exploded with a loud bang. In just a few moments, as many as 6 demon kings had died at the hands of Yang Kai. Faintly sensing something, Yang Kai suddenly turned his head to look into the distance. On a mountain peak in the distance, a graceful figure stood quietly on the mountain peak, looking in their direction. Yang Kai's expression suddenly became strange. What the hell? The final prize of this chaotic battle was Li Shiqing, so how could a female demon king participate? Could it be that this female demon king had some special hobbies? This was not impossible. After all, the forest was large enough that any bird could fly. Looking at each other from a distance, Yang Kai quickly recognized that this female demon king should be a feather demon because of the pair of delicate wings on her back. Grinning at her, the female demon king, on the other hand, turned around and left, a look of deep fear appearing in her eyes. She had obviously seen Kai Yang's previous display of invincible might and had set him as a strong enemy. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for her to retreat so quickly. In the audience, Xiao Wu covered her red lips with both hands as she stared blankly at Yang Kai's figure. She hadn't seen the scene of Yang Kai killing those 5 demon kings, but she had clearly seen the majestic scene of him killing a sand demon. That sand demon was clearly a demon king, but in front of Yang Kai, it was as weak as a 3-year-old child. This made her have more confidence in Yang Kai, and she felt that it was not impossible for him to survive until the end. She immediately paid attention to the movements on Yang Kai's side, and the demon commander behind her laughed mischievously. Did you see that? Your master is really strong. I didn't make a mistake this time. Seemingly in order to adapt to this large-scale chaotic battle, the space of the blood fighting field, which was not small to begin with, became a lot more vast. After Yang Kai killed those 6 demon kings, he strolled around the blood fighting field. For him, his ultimate goal was to win Li Shiqing, so all the members of the demon race in the blood fighting field were enemies, and they were all people who could be killed. Perhaps it was because he looked a little harmless, unlike the other demon kings who were tall and sturdy, but he easily attracted the attention of others. However, without exception, all the members of the demon race who came to provoke him died a horrible death. Yang Kai slaughtered his way, and in addition to the first 6 demon kings, in the following 2 hours, he actually killed 7 or 8 demon kings. In other words, the number of demon kings who died at his hands in the entire blood fighting field was more than 10. This was an extremely terrifying ratio. It must be known that the total number of people who participated in this chaotic battle was only 70 to 80. His actions attracted the attention of countless members of the demon race in the audience. They all tried to find out where this guy came from, and why they hadn't seen him before. Many members of the demon race revealed excited and expectant expressions. They couldn't wait for Yang Kai to kill as many as possible. It would be best if he could survive until the end. These were naturally the people who bet on Yang Kai. It wasn't only the demon commander behind Xiao Wu who bet on Yang Kai. There were many members of the demon race who wanted to get rich overnight. In the previous betting information, only Yang Kai and a few reckless demon commanders had odds of 1 to 10. They definitely couldn't bet on those demon commanders, so their only choice was Yang Kai. There were several tens of thousands of spectators in the blood fighting field, and at least 1,000 of them had bet on Yang Kai. These 1,000 people could be said to be staring at Yang Kai without blinking, fearing that he would fall in the blood fighting field. After 2 hours, the chaos in the blood fighting field had more or less subsided. Of the 70 to 80 participants, only less than half were still alive. The rest were basically dead. However, those who were able to survive until now basically all had their own life-saving skills or were people with formidable strength. Hey, what are those guys doing? The demon commander behind Xiao Wu suddenly seemed to have discovered something and looked at a certain place in surprise. Hearing this, Xiao Wu searched the blood-fighting arena for a while and quickly found something amiss. Previously, she had been paying attention to Yang Kai and didn't pay attention to the movements of the others. Now that she was reminded by the demon commander, she suddenly realized that many demon kings had gathered together and were discussing something with solemn expressions. What was the meaning of this? She could actually see such a scene in the blood-fighting field. Xiao Wu was very surprised. However, it was her first time in the blood-fighting field, so she didn't understand the knack of it. She could only turn around and ask the demon commander, "Are they joining forces? Is this allowed in a chaotic battle?" Hearing this, the demon commander smiled. The so-called chaotic battle means that there are no rules. As long as you can survive until the end, there is nothing that is not allowed. It's just that. Just what? There are too many of them, the demon commander frowned. It wasn't like there was no such precedent in the past. In a chaotic battle, some people would temporarily form an alliance and advance and retreat together, waiting for the final moment to decide the victor. However, that was only when 2 or 3 people joined forces. 3 or 4 was already considered a lot. After all, when there were too many people, there would be too many variables. No one could guarantee that the others didn't have ulterior motives. What if they were tricked? However, at this moment, there were more than 3 or 4 demon race gathered together. There were 7 or 8 of them. There are still people approaching that way. Xiao Wu pointed at a certain place. The demon commander looked over and found that it was indeed the case. There was a demon king rapidly rushing towards the place where those people were gathered. After a short while, he arrived and directly joined them. The original demon kings only glanced at him and accepted his existence. What were they doing? The demon commander was also confused. If they were joining forces to fight the enemy, there was no need to gather so many people, right? Moreover, who could gather all of them in one place and make them seek common ground while shelving their differences? Faintly, he felt that there was a bit of a conspiracy. Frowning, he glanced at Yang Kai. No matter who these people were going to deal with in the end, it was still a difficult situation for Yang Kai. If he wanted to live until the end, he had to break the alliance of these people. Although Yang Kai's previous performance was incomparably stunning, killing more than 10 demon kings in a row, the demon commander wasn't sure whether he could pass this hurdle. At this moment, the group of demon kings seemed to have finished their discussion. Their figures leaped and rushed in a certain direction. After a short while, they arrived at a mountain peak. Each of them used the divine technique and hid themselves in various places on the mountain peak, leaving only a single demon king standing in the void. Another ambush. The demon commander opened his eyes wide, his face absent-minded. With so many demon kings gathered together, it could be said that they were invincible existences, yet they still wanted to set up an ambush. Just who was it that was worthy of their attention? After everyone had concealed themselves, the figure of the remaining demon king suddenly swayed and flew into the distance. Ah! The demon commander behind Xiao Wu suddenly shouted, his face ashen. With a long face, he said, "It's over, it's over, it's completely over." Xiao Wu was startled by his nervousness. She couldn't help but turn around and glare at him. The demon commander smacked his lips and looked at Xiao Wu sympathetically. "My condolences." "What condolences?" Xiao Wu was furious. She was worried about Yang Kai, but behind her, this guy actually spoke rudely. He was cursing the master. Chapter 34-49. You still can't see it. That demon commander scowled miserably, his facial muscles twitching as if someone had cut off a few kilograms of his flesh. He had a pained expression on his face. "See what?" Xiao Wu's frown deepened. That demon commander facepalmed. How could she not see such a clear situation? This woman is really stupid. He immediately explained, "Those guys' target is your family's master." What? Xiao Wu was greatly alarmed upon hearing this. She fixed her gaze and indeed found some clues. The demon king that had flown out from the mountain peak was actually heading straight for Yang Kai's location. It wouldn't be long before they met. She had also seen the deployment of this group of demon kings. A group of fellows with ill intentions sneaking around and setting up an ambush at the peak of the mountain. Only a single demon king had rushed out. It was clearly a bait to lure someone into the trap. Now that the demon commander behind her had reminded her, she finally reacted. Yang Kai was their prey. Perhaps it was an unintentional coincidence, but it could also be intentional. If it was just a coincidence, then it could be said that Yang Kai's luck was bad. However, if it was intentional, then it meant that Yang Kai's previous battle record of killing more than 10 Demon Kings had attracted the fear of those Demon Kings, which was why so many Demon Kings had joined hands. But no matter what, her master was in danger this time. Xiao Wu couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. She screamed in her heart, hoping that Yang Kai would change his direction or see through the enemy's scheme. Unfortunately, things didn't go as she wished. Yang Kai simply couldn't discover the trap in front of him. That Demon King that had rushed out came face to face with Yang Kai after a dozen breaths of time. Xiao Wu saw that Demon King didn't say a word and took the initiative to launch a round of attacks. After being easily blocked by Yang Kai, it immediately turned around and fled, turning into a streak of bloody light. Its speed was incomparably fast. It had no intention of fighting to the death with Yang Kai. It clearly wanted to lure him into the encirclement. This was a mid-rank Demon King, and a blood demon at that. Inside the blood arena, Yang Kai grinned maliciously as he chased after it. He didn't want to reveal his trump card until the final moment, so he didn't use the power of the space laws. Even so, his speed was much faster than the blood demons, and it wouldn't take long for him to catch up and kill him. But at this moment, a whistling sound suddenly came, and a stream of light suddenly shot out from the side. Yang! With a thud, an arrow appeared beside his feet. The arrow was 10 meters long and as thick as a child's arm. It was like an indestructible spear. The tail of the arrow trembled slightly and penetrated 3 feet into the ground. Demonic chi lingered on the arrow, emitting a heart-palpitating energy fluctuation. It was obvious that the strength of the person who shot the arrow was extraordinary. Yang Kai turned his head with a cold expression and saw a graceful figure standing a few kilometers away. This figure wore black clothes and held a bow in his hand, the bowstring gently vibrating. Because of this unforeseen event, the fleeing blood demon also stopped and turned his head, frowning. His goal this time was to lure Yang Kai into the trap he had prepared, but who would have thought that a variable would appear midway, causing his originally smooth plan to suffer a setback. Naturally, he wasn't in a good mood. Looking at the feather demon who had shot the arrow, the blood demon seemed to recognize him and felt a headache coming on. Continuing to stay in place wasn't a solution. After all, he was playing the role of being chased by Yang Kai. If he stopped and watched for too long, he would only expose himself, so he only hesitated for a moment before turning around and flying away. He had missed a good opportunity this time, but there would be a next time. However, if Yang Kai became suspicious, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. The blood demon retreated decisively, so Yang Kai didn't continue to pursue. In any case, it didn't matter who he killed. Everyone in the blood fighting stage had to die. It was only a matter of time. At this moment, he recognized that the person who had shot the arrow at him was the feather demon he had seen when he first came in. A female demon king and a feather demon. Who else could it be but her? Reaching out, Yang Kai grabbed the tail of the arrow at his feet and pulled it out. He weighed it in his hand a few times to test its weight. Then, Yang Kai raised his head and smiled at the feather demon a few kilometers away. In the next moment, he raised his arm and threw the arrow in his hand in that direction. With a whoosh, a sharp light appeared at the tip of the 10-meter-long arrow. It seemed to be able to break through all obstacles in the world. Carrying a world-destroying momentum, it flew towards the feather demon. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of the feather demon. Unexpectedly, the feather demon's expression didn't change. With a calm expression, she stretched the bow in her hand forward, brushing against the incoming arrow. With a twist of her fingers, the bowstring was pulled back in an instant. Then, her body suddenly turned. By the time she stabilized, the arrow Yang Kai had shot was already knocked on her bowstring. At this very moment, Yang Kai was only 100 meters away from the feather demon. At the same time he threw the arrow, his entire body rushed forward. Seeing this scene, Yang Kai's eyes lit up. He secretly praised his good skill. The magic fluctuations emitted by the feather demon showed that she was only a mid-ranked demon king. However, This reaction speed and ability to adapt to the situation were definitely not something a mid-ranked demon king could possess. The force of his throw was enormous, but the other party had only used a slight twist of his body to dissipate most of the force. Such a skilled and daring person was also a rare talent, a fierce general that was hard to come by. He felt that he had somewhat underestimated this demoness. Narking the arrow on the bowstring again, the arrow in the feather demon's hand shot out again. Yang Kai's momentum didn't decrease. His head tilted slightly, avoiding the disturbance of the arrow by a hair's breadth. His figure quickly closed in on the feather demon. As an outstanding archer, the feather demon naturally knew where her greatest advantage was. She didn't give Yang Kai a chance to close in at all. She didn't seem to move at all, but her figure floated backwards. With a twist of her slender fingers, one arrow after another appeared in her hand. She continuously pulled the bowstring. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen arrows broke through the barrier of space as if they were chasing the stars and the moon. They exploded in front of Yang Kai. Yang Kai first avoided the first few arrows, but he was powerless to continue. The feather demon's archery was a level higher than he had imagined. Helpless, he stretched out his hand and grabbed forward. As the law of space fluctuated, a pitch-black black hole appeared in front of him. Although he had used the law of space when he killed the demon race before, his methods were very hidden and he wasn't afraid of being seen through. At this moment, with the appearance of this black hole, he was afraid that some of his trump cards would be exposed. But it wasn't a big deal. He had many means, so even if some of them were exposed, it wouldn't be a big deal. The black hole swallowed everything, and the last few arrows plunged into it and disappeared without a trace. After Yang Kai finished dealing with this, he looked up and saw that the feather demon had a stunned expression. Obviously, she didn't expect Yang Kai to resolve her killing move so easily. However, she was also a person with a calm temperament. The surprise only lasted for a moment before she pulled the bowstring again. This time, it was very different from before. She actually stored up power for 3 breaths. When the sharp arrow whistled over, the arrow shone brightly and bloomed with dazzling light. Yang Kai dealt with all changes by sticking to the status quo. He stretched out his hand again and a black hole formed in front of him. However, just as the black hole was about to devour the arrow, a slight cracking sound suddenly rang out. The 10-meter-long arrow suddenly exploded, turning into a rain of arrows that blotted out the sky and covered a large area. This caught the feather demon off guard and she plunged into the black hole with a stunned expression. Asterisk ding ding dang dang. Asterisk countless crisp sounds rang out as the arrows shattered. Although there were many of them, their power was greatly reduced. Yang Kai pushed his vigorous Emperor Qi to block them all. When the sound gradually disappeared, he had already broken out of the arrow rain with cold air wrapped around his body. He grimaced for a while and disappeared from the place with a flash. The feather demon was still smiling and admiring her masterpiece when she suddenly saw such a strange scene. Her expression changed slightly and without thinking, she turned the bow in her hand and aimed it behind her. It was at this moment that Yang Kai's figure suddenly appeared behind her and punched with all his strength, but it hit the other party's bowstring. The bowstring groaned with difficulty and was severely bent, but most of the force was removed. The feather demon flipped a few times in the air and slithered to Yang Kai's side like a snake. Placing the bowstring in front of Yang Kai's neck, she placed the bow behind his head and pulled the bowstring back. Yang Kai's eyes widened and he reached out to block his throat. With a creak, a tingling sensation came from his palm. It was the result of the bowstring cutting into his skin. Although he knew that his life would not be in danger even if he was cut, Yang Kai still broke out in a cold sweat. This female demon king's reaction was unusually fast. He originally thought that she was a feather demon and would die in close combat. Who knew that her close combat ability was also so outstanding? He almost suffered a loss by borrowing the force of her attack. Exerting force in his palm, he flicked the bowstring away and lowered his head slightly to escape the grip of the strong bow. Yang Kai's arm shook and his fist smashed behind him. His fist smashed into empty air. It was the demoness who did a split and leaned back at the same time, narrowly avoiding the fist. Yang Kai glanced sideways and saw that the female devil's chest was high and his fist had brushed past the tip of her nose. From this angle, he could clearly see the snow-white ravine on her chest. Not in the mood to appreciate it, Yang Kai lifted his foot and kicked out. The female demon king slid and circled around Yang Kai half a circle. Her body suddenly bounced back and she twisted her 5 fingers. Another arrow appeared, but this arrow was only 3 feet long. It was clearly specially made for close combat. Moreover, the arrowhead was dark green. It was clear that it was poisoned. The bowstring was pulled back and the arrow was pointed at Yang Kai's temple, ready to shoot. The female devil looked at Yang Kai provocatively and jokingly said, "You're dead. Your mother's fart." Yang Kai faced her from the side. His expression was also playful as he laughed sinisterly. "You can try and see who dies first." Chapter 3450. As soon as these words came out, the female demon king frowned and looked down at her chest, only to see Yang Kai's 5 fingers forming a claw and grabbing her left chest. His fingertips flickered with a dangerous aura. TSK. The female demon king curled her lips in displeasure. She was careless and let this guy get back at her. However, feeling Yang Kai's power fluctuations at such a close distance, she finally saw some clues. Slightly frowning, she looked at Yang Kai curiously and asked, "Are you the human that the Holy Senior brought back from Star Boundary?" Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. "You know me?" The female demon king chuckled. "It is rumored that a human race master was treated unfairly and walked into the fire demon fall to become the demon race. There was no place for him in Star Boundary and he was forced to follow the Holy Senior to Phantom Continent. It seems that it is you." This news spread really fast. Yang Kai had an unhappy expression, as if something shameful about him had been exposed. His eyes flashed with killing intent. The female demon king saw through his thoughts, but she was not afraid and said indifferently, "It is useless for you to kill me. Many people in Holy City already know. After all, you were brought back by the Holy Senior." Pausing for a moment, she continued, "What's more, if you really want to kill me, it is not certain who will die first." Yang Kai's eyes flickered for a while, as if he was hesitating and struggling. His face was fierce, but in fact, he was thinking about who spread the news. He had only been in demon territory for a few days, and Yu Meng herself could not have wantonly spread such a thing, so it could only be done by someone else. But what was the purpose? Just as Yang Kai was pondering, the female demon king raised her smooth chin and shouted at Yang Kai, "Hey, you should let go." Hearing this, Yang Kai coldly snorted and straightforwardly withdrew his hand. No matter what, for a grown man to put his hand on a woman's chest in front of so many people, it was somewhat unsightly. Seeing this, the other party's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, but he also withdrew the arrow. This strange scene confused the tens of thousands of spectators in the blood-fighting arena. Just a moment ago, these two fellows were like fire and water, ready to fight to the death. How could they coexist peacefully in the blink of an eye? On the contrary, Xiao Wu and the demon commander behind her both let out a sigh of relief at the same time. Seeing Yang Kai being stabbed in the temple by a highly toxic arrow, the two of them almost forgot to breathe, afraid that they would see a scene that they did not want to see in the next instant. Only at this time did the stone in their hearts fall down, and they both went limp in their seats. Just now, it was truly thrilling. Inside the blood arena, Yang Kai cast a sidelong glance at the female demon king, his expression uncertain. The reason why he had stopped so quickly wasn't because he had tender feelings for the fairer sex. It was because although the opponent's previous series of attacks were dazzling and ferocious, in fact, there was no killing intent. It was more of a probing factor. He also wanted to know what this female demon king wanted to do. "Why didn't you stay in the Saint's Palace? Why did you come to the blood-fighting arena?" The female demon king looked at him for a while, then suddenly asked. After that, she showed a look of realization. "Oh, I understand. You came for that prize, right?" She looked very excited and came closer. "How did you know that there would be such a prize in the blood-fighting arena? Do you have any inside information? Can you tell me a little?" "Inside information, my ass." Yang Kai cursed in his heart and said impatiently, If you have something to say it quickly. Such a rude attitude obviously made the other party a little unhappy. She couldn't help but snort. Playing with the bow in her hand, she looked up and said indifferently, "You owe me a life. Shouldn't you say thank you first?" Yang Kai looked at her from head to toe, and a touch of pity appeared in his eyes. His mouth squirmed, and he said, "Crazy woman." He turned around and walked away. The female demon king was stunned. After she reacted, she flashed and blocked Yang Kai's way. She looked at Yang Kai fiercely and said, "Are you scolding me? Get out of my way." Yang Kai stretched out his huge fist at her, and looked terrible. "I don't like to hit women, but it doesn't mean that I can't hit women. If you dare to talk endlessly, I will take your life immediately." He didn't have any psychological burden to kill a female demon king that he didn't know. Killing a demon king here meant that there would be one less enemy in the astral world. The female demon king looked like she was choked. Her big eyes were wide open, and she was so angry that she laughed and said, "Do you think I am joking with you? Do you know that if I didn't stop you just now, you would be a dead man now?" "Oh." Yang Kai's voice was surprised, but his expression was calm. He looked at her indifferently and said, "May I ask how I died?" The female demon king said in a deep voice, "You were lured into a trap. More than 10 demon kings surrounded you, and 3 of them were high-rank demon kings. Do you still have your life?" Yang Kai wrinkled his brows. He thoughtfully looked in the direction that the blood demon had fled, and then looked at the feather demon. "How do you know?" "More than 10 demon kings, and 3 of them were high-rank demon kings. If he was really surrounded by this group of people, it would be troublesome. At that time, even if he could kill his way out of the encirclement, he would definitely expose most of his trump cards. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, Yang Kai really didn't want such a situation to happen. He came to the demon territory for another purpose. Although Yu Rumeng knew about his ability, others didn't. Yu Rumeng also couldn't spread it everywhere. Hiding his claws would make it easier for him to act in the future. The feather demon sneered, "Are you afraid?" "Afraid?" Yang Kai smiled arrogantly. This king betrayed the astral boundary and escaped from the hands of the great emperors. I was lucky enough to survive being chased by the astral boundary's fake emperors. I don't know how to write the word afraid. These words stunned the feather demon. Although she was from the demon race, she also knew what the great emperors and the fake emperors were. They were equivalent to the existence of the holy sage and half-saint in the demon territory. This guy in front of her dared to betray the astral boundary and go against the great emperors and the fake emperors. She was afraid that he was really bold. At that moment, she was too lazy to argue with him. She curled her lips and said, "You don't need to know how I know. Anyway, in the current situation, there are people who don't want you to win the final victory. They have already started to join forces to deal with you." Yang Kai stroked the stubble on his chin and nodded slightly. "If things are really as you said, then this king will owe you a favor. If you encounter any trouble in the future, come to the holy sage's palace to look for me. If I can help, I will not refuse." He did not doubt what the other party said because it was meaningless to lie to him in this kind of place. What's more, the feather demon was good at shooting and had excellent eyesight. The powerful feather demon could even cultivate a magical eye technique that allowed her to see many things that others could not. Of course, the premise of all this was that she could survive this chaotic battle. Yang Kai did not kill her now, but it did not mean that he would not kill her at the last moment. If it really came to that point, who would care about favors? If you are dead, what's the use of your favor? The feather demon sneered. Then what do you want? Yang Kai glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. The other party saw something and deliberately came to stop him from falling into the trap. It was definitely not out of kindness, but something else. Let's join forces. Although the feather demon was a woman, she was also very straightforward and directly stated her purpose. You, join forces with me? Yang Kai blinked. He pointed at her and then pointed at himself. The corner of his mouth slowly rose and his smile gradually widened. The feather demon's face was gloomy as she flew into a rage. Bastard, you dare to look down on me? Saying this, she pulled the bow in her hand and an arrow was placed on the string. She looked like she was going to teach Yang Kai a lesson. Sorry. Yang Kai raised his hand and gestured for her not to be impulsive. That's not what I meant. Then what do you mean? The feather demon gritted her teeth. The smile of this bastard in front of her clearly had a taste of contempt. She definitely did not see wrong. I am from the human race and you are from the demon race. Joining forces like this. I feel that it is very strange. Yang Kai casually found an excuse, but thinking about it carefully, with such a helper, it would save him a lot of effort. Perhaps he would not need to expose himself too much. Really? The feather demon looked at Yang Kai from the side. Her bright eyes were filled with distrust. Yang Kai raised 3 fingers to the sky and said with a serious expression, Really? The feather demon put away the arrow and snorted, You better not lie to me, otherwise you won't have a good ending. After pausing for a bit, she said, What does it matter if you are from the human demon race? In any case, you have already become the demon race out of the star boundary. Although you are not a pure demon race member, you already have a demonic nature. Sooner or later, you will become a member of my demon race. Besides, so what if you are from the human race? This old lady will join forces with you. I will beat anyone who refuses to obey. Good. Yang Kai gave her a thumbs up. He rubbed his head and said, I still have a question. Speak. If you and I really join forces to break through the enemy, what will happen in the end? The feather demon pursed her lips into a smile. Her smile was filled with cruelty and coldness. Of course it will be whoever lives in the end who wins the prize. Oh. Yang Kai had a look of realization. He snapped his fingers and said, In other words, you and I will have to fight in the end. The feather demon looked at him playfully, You can kill yourself. In any case, you are not my match. Yang Kai laughed, Keep that confidence. You are the strongest. The feather demon looked unhappy. Yang Kai suddenly extended his hand to her and said with a serious expression, Yang Kai. The feather demon frowned. After a while, she realized what was going on. She also extended her hand and said indifferently, Boya. Boya's hand was suddenly scratched. She immediately cursed at Yang Kai, Damn, you are taking advantage of me. Saying this, she quickly pulled her hand out of Yang Kai's hand. While shivering, she kept wiping her hand on her clothes with a disgusted look on her face. Yang Kai looked at Boya with a dumbfounded expression, You really like women? When Yang Kai first saw this woman, he wondered why a female demon king would sign up for this battle. Could it be that she had some kind of special hobby? Now that he casually probed her, he realized that things were really as he thought. This female demon king with a voluptuous figure and good looks really did have a unique hobby. Chapter 3451. It's none of your business who I like. Boya scolded angrily. She didn't show the slightest bit of shame even though Yang Kai had exposed her private matters. Did this she-devil grow up eating shit? Yang Kai couldn't help cursing in his heart, but he was too lazy to care about her bad attitude. Turning his head, he glanced in the direction the blood demon had fled and said, Since you've seen through those guys' plot and deployment, you must have a way to deal with them, right? Let's hear it. How should we work together? The corner of Boya's lips curled up. She looked at Yang Kai playfully and said, Of course you'll charge at the front and attract their firepower. I'll ambush them from behind and shoot them down one by one. This was the simplest and most direct plan. It didn't guarantee Yang Kai's safety at all. After all, no one could guarantee that Boya wasn't in cahoots with those people, and there was no guarantee that she wouldn't shoot an arrow at Yang Kai when he wasn't paying attention. After saying this, she thought Yang Kai would refuse and discuss a better plan with her. Who would have thought that Yang Kai would only ponder for a moment before nodding and saying, Good idea. Let's do it. A hint of astonishment flashed through Boya's eyes. This guy's reaction was a little different from what she had imagined. Was he that confident in himself? The next moment, Boya felt someone pat her shoulder. She was shocked to see Yang Kai looking at her solemnly. Let's work together and cause a ruckus. A layer of cold sweat appeared on Boya's back. She had been hit before she could even react. In other words, if this man wanted to kill her, she might have already died. Was this a warning? Boya's brows furrowed. but she suddenly smiled. The stronger young Kai appeared, the higher the chances of them working together. She was really afraid that young Kai wasn't strong enough. On the mountain peak, a bloody streak of light appeared, revealing the figure of the blood demon who had left earlier. His face was full of helplessness. Upon seeing this, the demon kings hiding in the surroundings all revealed themselves and gathered around, whispering to one another. Several demon kings immediately revealed furious expressions. No one knew what they were talking about, but the demon race in the audience could almost guess the content of their conversation. It was nothing more than a failed attempt to lure the enemy and another plan. At this moment, a commotion broke out among the audience. Everyone turned to look at young Kai and Boya in a daze. The man and woman seemed to have finished their discussion and were planning to join forces. They were chasing after the blood demon. It wouldn't take long for them to reach the previous encirclement. Xiao Wu covered her red lips with her hand, a look of disbelief on her face. The demon commander behind her reached out and grabbed his hair, grimacing as he wailed, "What is he doing? Wasn't this walking right into a trap? Crazy, crazy, completely crazy. My demon crystal." When he saw a winged demon suddenly appear and stop young Kai at the crucial moment, he naively thought that young Kai was lucky enough to avoid such a trap. Who would have thought that the winged demon was also an idiot and actually followed young Kai into the trap? Did these two fellows think that their lives were too long? The demon commander couldn't bear to watch any longer. He was afraid that he would have a nervous breakdown. In the blood arena, young Kai's path was unimpeded. Boya was no longer by his side. This woman had already concealed her aura and was following young Kai unhurriedly for 5 kilometers. She couldn't easily expose herself unless it was time for her to take action. A few dozen kilometers were covered in less than a moment. At the foot of the mountain, young Kai meandered his way. Looking up, he saw the lush forest and the trees swaying in the wind, giving him a sense of danger. Using his divine sense, he found that there were indeed more than 10 Demon King-level auras hidden inside. 3 of them were extremely powerful, reaching the level of a high-rank Demon King. All of this was consistent with the information provided by Boya. He calmly stood in place and looked around for a while. Xiao Wu, who was in the spectator stands, was so stifled that she almost couldn't breathe. She kept wailing in her heart, "Don't go in, it's a trap." The demon commander behind her also held his breath, staring at young Kai's figure without blinking, praying that he would discover some clues and leave this place. The next moment, in front of everyone's eyes, Kai Yang raised his hand to his mouth and called out loudly, "Is there anyone?" The sound waves converged and formed into a thunderous boom, causing the row of trees in front of him to sway left and right, the leaves rustling. The demon commander directly collapsed on his chair, looking weak and powerless, as if he was about to die. 5 kilometers away, Boya, who was slowly approaching with her body concealed, also had a dark expression. She couldn't help but slap her forehead. This guy, what the hell is he doing? With his shout, wouldn't the enemies lying in ambush all know that he's here? How could there be any surprise effect? Boya suddenly realized that cooperating with young Kai was probably a wrong decision. This made her have the urge to turn around and leave. In any case, young Kai's life and death had nothing to do with her. On the mountain peak, the 10 or so demon kings were still gathered together, seemingly having some kind of dispute. They were discussing left and right, but at this moment, they all turned their heads to look at the foot of the mountain, each of them revealing a look of pleasant surprise. They originally thought that after failing to lure the enemy, they would have to put in more effort to deploy. Who would have thought that the prey would actually take the initiative to deliver itself to their doorstep? This was truly a case of unstoppable luck. The 10 or so pairs of eyes quickly met, and in the next moment, one of the demon kings soared into the sky, heading straight for the foot of the mountain. The others quickly concealed themselves and restrained their auras. The demon king dispatched this time wasn't the blood demon from before. After all, that blood demon had already been repelled by young Kai once. If he were to appear again, it might arouse young Kai's suspicions. Therefore, another demon king took over the important task of luring the enemy. This was a malevolent-looking bone demon. There wasn't a trace of flesh on its body, and its bones were pitch black. Only 2 dim lights flickered in its eye sockets. Like the blood demon, this bone demon was also a mid-rank demon king. After all, according to the information obtained by these demon kings, Yang Kai had already killed many demon kings in the blood arena. If their strength was too low, they would only be courting death. If their strength was too high, they were afraid of scaring Yang Kai. A mid-rank demon king was their only choice. Diving down from the mountain peak, the bone demon arrived at the foot of the mountain in a few breaths of time. The bone demon's flickering eyes locked onto Yang Kai. It raised its hand and pointed downwards. A sharp bone spear wrapped in pitch-black demon chi shot out. As soon as the bone spear appeared, it was already in front of Yang Kai, seemingly ignoring the obstruction of space. With a swish, Yang Kai lowered his head and stiffened in place. He didn't move, but the bone spear had disappeared without a trace. Hit! The bone demon was also somewhat surprised. Wasn't this guy supposed to be very powerful? I've already killed so many demon kings along the way, so why is he so weak? He couldn't help but want to laugh. If Yang Kai really died at his hands, it would be a huge contribution. Thinking so, he didn't care about luring the enemy. If he could really kill Yang Kai here, why would he need to go through so much trouble to lure him up? Taking all the credit for himself was much more tempting than sharing it with more than a dozen people. His figure flashed and he pounced downwards. At the same time, he reached out and pulled out a pitch-black bone from his waist. The bone looked like a sword that had been polished to incomparable sharpness. It flickered with a dim light. Surprisingly, it was a high-quality demon artifact. Moreover, it was a demon artifact refined from the bone demon's own bone. Bone demons liked to do this. They would choose the hardest bone in their body and refine it day and night into a demon artifact. When facing an enemy, it would often increase their strength. With the bone sword in hand, the bone demon's killing intent soared. Clearly, he wanted to get rid of Yang Kai in one fell swoop. At that moment, Yang Kai, who had been lowering his head, suddenly raised it slowly and grinned at the bone demon that was swooping down. This smile almost scared the bone demon out of his wits. Because the bone spear he thought he had hit Yang Kai was actually bitten by this guy's teeth. It didn't have any effect at all. This is a fucking trap. The bone demon immediately reacted, but he was greedy for merit. At this moment, he was only 300 feet away from Yang Kai. It was too late for him to withdraw, so he ruthlessly swung the bone sword in his hand. Yang Kai grabbed the bone spear in his mouth and swung it diagonally. With a clang, the bone spear and the bone sword collided, producing the sound of metal clashing. It was incomparably ear-piercing, and a shower of sparks scattered like a mini meteor shower. Yang Kai's figure didn't move, but the bone demon felt an incomparably huge force coming at him head-on. It almost knocked the bone sword out of his hand, and his entire skeleton body flipped several times in the air due to this great force. As his vision returned to normal, he saw Yang Kai holding the bone spear and rushing towards him like a bolt of lightning. An indescribable sense of oppression rose from his heart as a sensational sense of crisis enveloped him. The bone demon's eyes flashed wildly as an inconceivable thought flashed through his mind: if he really gets close, I'll definitely die. In any case, he was still a mid-rank demon king. Although he had accidentally fallen into a disadvantageous position, he wouldn't just resign himself to death. Suddenly raising his hand, the 5 fingers on his withered hand flew out and expanded in the wind, turning into 5 bone demons several meters tall. They formed an arrow-shaped formation and rushed towards Yang Kai, each holding a sword, shield, axe, and hammer, giving off a demonic chi. These 5 bone demons formed by his 5 fingers all exuded the energy fluctuations of a low-rank demon king. Moreover, they cooperated with each other seamlessly. The shield-wielding skeletal demon rushed to the front. Its huge shield almost covered its body, providing the most powerful protection for the other skeletal demons. The other 4 skeletal demons flanked it from the left and right. As they opened and closed their teeth, they made a crunching sound. Yang Kai completely ignored them, as if he didn't see the 5 bone demons. With a loud bang, he met them head-on, directly crashing into the huge shield held by the bone demon in the middle. A violent force swept out, and the shield-wielding skeletal demon was unable to maintain its footing. Its body, which was tens of feet tall, was knocked back like a shooting star. The other 4 skeletal demons slashed down with their weapons, but only hit a string of afterimages. Chapter 3452. In the blink of an eye, the bone demon had lost sight of Yang Kai. The 2 dim lights in its eye sockets suddenly became much brighter as it spread out its divine sense like a tide, trying to find Yang Kai's figure. There was no one to its left or right, and there was no sound behind it. The bone devil stared at the shield-wielding skeleton demon that was charging at it. Its gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the skeleton demon and look behind it. The bone devil made a gesture with one hand, and the shield-wielding skeleton demon exploded into a rain of bones that flew backward like an umbrella, covering all directions without any blind spots. However, there was no one behind the shield-wielding skeletal demon as he had expected. The bone demon's heart sank as it suddenly looked up. The next moment, a dim light flashed in its eyes as it finally found the trace of its enemy. High up in the sky, Yang Kai dived down headfirst, spreading out his big hand to cover the ground below in the blink of an eye. A violent surge of Emperor Chi pressed down like a mountain, causing the bone demon's well-honed bones to creak. It desperately urged its demonic chi to escape, but the terrifying pressure made it unable to move at all. This guy is really so powerful. Although it had long known that Yang Kai had killed many demon kings along the way, many of whom were mid-rank existences, the bone demon did not realize just how powerful this person was until it actually faced him. This was not a power that could be possessed by someone of his cultivation. The bone demon was powerless to resist. There was a loud bang. A shockwave burst out, causing the earth to shake. Even with a powerful spirit array isolating the outside from the outside, the tens of thousands of demon race in the audience could still feel the terrifying power of this palm strike. All of them showed looks of shock as the same thought emerged in their minds: where did this guy come from? How come I've never heard of him before? After a short while, everything calmed down. Yang Kai stood in the air, less than a meter above the ground, looking down indifferently. Not far in front of Yang Kai, the bone devil had been smashed into the ground, leaving only his head exposed. The dim light in his eye sockets flickered. Obviously, he was stunned by Yang Kai's attack. His soul was not steady enough. Even the few skeleton devils under his control were dancing unsteadily as if they were drunk. When he finally managed to recover, he felt the light above his head being obscured by a shadow. Looking up, he saw Yang Kai squatting in front of him, reaching out and patting his head, as if he was stroking an exquisite piece of art. In fact, Yang Kai's Emperor Chi had already broken through the bone demon's defenses and surged into his body, sealing his cultivation and making him unable to resist. As their eyes met, Bone saw the playful look in Yang Kai's eyes. The light in his eyes couldn't help but jump, and a feeling of doom swept through his body. If you tell me who ordered you to deal with this king will give you a quick death. Yang Kai lowered his voice and whispered in front of him. In this blood arena, more than a dozen demon king had gathered to deal with him. This was a big deal. Yang Kai did not believe that this was a coincidence. There must be someone behind this. Moreover, he had only been in the demon territory for a few days, and he had not offended anyone yet. After thinking about it, there was only one possibility: Bone Devil remained silent. Knowing that Yang Kai wanted to kill him, he naturally would not let Yang Kai get what he wanted. At this time, silence was golden. Yang Kai grinned and said, "Even if you don't say it, I can guess. You sang, right?" Only this guy had shown such obvious hostility and killing intent during their first meeting. Moreover, Yu Sang was a half-saint, so he had the ability to do something in the blood arena. Bone Devil did not need to respond. When Yang Kai said that name, he clearly felt Bone Devil's soul shake. This made him even more certain of his guess. "Let me ask you another question." Yang Kai looked at him with a smile. "There is a female demon king called Boya. Is she with you?" Although there was nothing suspicious about Boya's behavior before, Yang Kai couldn't really trust her. It would be best if he could learn something from this bone demon, but even if he didn't gain anything, it didn't matter. He was just casually asking, so it wouldn't be a big deal. If you want to kill me, then kill me. Bone Devil's teeth opened and closed, and the sound of metal clashing could be heard. Why talk so much nonsense? Do you think this king will tell you? He didn't know why Kai Yang was inquiring about this matter, but since things had already gotten to this point, there was no point in saying anything. He could only blame himself for underestimating the enemy and recklessly rushing forward. He hoped that these dozen or so people would be able to learn a lesson and avenge him. Yang Kai nodded and poured his Emperor Qi into Bone Devil's body. With a series of cracking sounds, all the bones in Bone Devil's body were shattered. The two dim lights in his eye sockets quickly dimmed, and he died silently. After dealing with this bone demon, Yang Kai raised his head abruptly and without any hesitation, shot towards the mountain peak like a bolt of lightning. Halfway up the mountain, a series of fierce attacks suddenly came from the top of the mountain. Fireballs the size of wash basins burned fiercely, lightning bolts as thick as a child's arm crisscrossed into a net, and icicles and wind blades shot out, cutting the towering trees into pieces. Yang Kai seemed to be dancing on the Grim Reaper's scythe, his figure flickering left and right, always managing to avoid the fatal attacks at the critical moment. He climbed all the way to the top of the mountain without suffering any injuries. Without warning, Yang Kai punched out towards a certain spot in the void. A ghostly voice staggered out, its body like a phantom. It was a shadow demon. The shadow demon's figure flickered, but its eyes showed a look of disbelief, as if it did not expect its concealment to be seen through. Laughing heartily, Kai Yang shouted, "Come and die." As soon as his voice fell, Yang Kai rushed in front of the shadow demon and reached out to grab it. Space principles fluctuated and a pitch-black hole immediately appeared behind the shadow demon. The shadow demon's reaction was also extremely fast, its figure flickering and turning into thousands of black crows, flapping their wings and frantically fleeing in all directions. The black hole swallowed many of the black crows into the void, but it did not completely devour them, allowing some of the black crows to escape. The fleeing black crows gathered not far away, once again revealing the shadow demon's figure, but at this moment, the shadow demon seemed to have suffered heavy injuries, its aura fluctuating. Although it had escaped with its secret technique, many of its black crows had been swallowed up, so it had naturally lost Yuan Qi. For a time, it looked at Yang Kai with fear, no longer daring to rashly approach. But at this moment, a thick blood-red light attacked from the side, its killing intent soaring to the sky. It was the Blood Demon Demon King, taking advantage of Yang Kai's unpreparedness to attack. It was unknown whether this blood demon was the one who had tried to lure Yang Kai into a trap before. The blood demon had chosen the perfect time to attack, just as Yang Kai and the shadow demon were crossing paths. Sure enough, it was able to create a miraculous effect, the thick blood-red light directly wrapping Yang Kai in the middle. In the next moment, the blood-red light's killing intent increased again, and a sizzling sound came from within. It was obvious that it had an extremely strong corrosive power, and it wanted to refine Yang Kai in this blood-red light. As far as the eye could see, Yang Kai was nowhere to be seen, completely wrapped in a blood-red sphere, floating in the air. A human face appeared on the surface of the blood-red sphere, which should be the face of the blood demon. At this moment, it was smiling sinisterly, full of killing intent. The surrounding demon kings appeared one after another, all of them staring at the blood-red sphere with indifferent expressions, quietly waiting for the moment when Yang Kai was completely refined and turned into a pool of blood. But soon, the expressions of these demon kings became uncertain, because the face on the surface of the blood-red sphere suddenly showed a stunned expression. Immediately after, the rolling blood-red sphere expanded in all directions, bulging one after another. Although these bulges quickly recovered under the suppression of the blood demon, it showed that the person inside was struggling with all his might. The bulges grew faster and faster, and the extent of the bulges also grew bigger and bigger. The expression of the face on the surface of the blood-red sphere also became more and more shocked. A powerful aura spread out from the blood-red sphere, as if a sleeping dragon had awoken. The surrounding demon kings all had solemn expressions. That face suddenly opened and shouted, "I can't hold on anymore." At this point, the blood-red sphere exploded, and a figure shot out like lightning. It was the furious Yang Kai, who seemed to be in a bad mood after being trapped for so long. His entire expression was sinister and terrifying to the extreme. The moment he escaped, he stretched out his hand and grabbed at the air, grabbing a ball of squirming blood. After the blood-red sphere was broken, the condensed blood naturally flew in all directions, but the ball that Yang Kai grabbed seemed to be the key. The scattered blood gathered in his hand, and in the blink of an eye, it condensed into the blood demon's figure. The blood demon felt like crying. He also didn't know how Yang Kai could find his vital point so accurately. Now that he was grabbed by the neck, he couldn't move at all. Heh. Yang Kai grinned sinisterly. He raised the blood demon in his hand and looked at him at close range. Then, he opened his mouth and suddenly spat out a ball of raging flames. Fire dragon's breath. He had a deep understanding of the dragon race's secret techniques, and with the support of his golden divine dragon source, he could now use the majority of the dragon race's secret techniques. Apart from a few forbidden techniques that he couldn't use, in terms of the number of dragon race secret techniques he had mastered, even Great Elder Zhu Yang and Second Elder Fu Xiu couldn't compare with him. After all, his source wasn't restricted, but Great Elder and Second Elder could only lean towards a certain attribute, so there was no comparison between them. A mournful scream rang out, as if he was enduring the most terrifying torture in the world. The blood demon in Yang Kai's hand struggled with all his might, but it was to no avail. Under the continuous burning of the dragon fire, his vitality was rapidly evaporating. In less than 3 breaths of time, the blood demon had become a charred corpse. Yang Kai casually threw the charred corpse to the side, turned around, and stared at the shadow demon that he had previously injured. It was better to break 1 finger than injure 10. The shadow demon was good at concealment and assassination. If he didn't get rid of it in one go, it would definitely cause a lot of interference. Chapter 3453. Seeing Yang Kai's gaze sweep over him, the shadow demon knew that the situation was far from good. He had just been heavily injured by Yang Kai when he was at his peak, and now that he was injured, he was even less likely to be a match for him. As such, as soon as he sensed Yang Kai's killing intent, he wanted to retreat. But when their eyes met, he was shocked to discover that there was a golden vertical line in Kai Yang's left eye. This vertical line was filled with majesty and terror, capable of shaking one's mind and soul. Demon Eye of Annihilation. In that brief moment of hesitation, he had missed the best opportunity to escape. A saber light suddenly slashed out from Yang Kai's left eye, silently tearing through the shadow demon's knowledge sea defenses and slashing into his knowledge sea. The Demon Eye of Annihilation combined with the soul-severing saber or the blossoming lotus secret technique was simply unstoppable. Before Yang Kai had reached this level of strength, he had used this combination countless times to deal with powerful enemies, each time achieving miraculous results. Now that he was facing a heavily injured shadow demon, it was naturally easy for him to use this combination. The soul-severing saber light, which had been activated with the heaven-severing saber secret technique, contained boundless power. The shadow demon felt a tearing pain in his knowledge sea, causing him to howl miserably and stop the escape technique he was about to use. Forcefully enduring the heart-wrenching pain and stabilizing his soul, he finally had a chance to catch his breath, but before he could do so, a shout entered his ears, "Be careful. Quickly retreat." Looking up, he saw that Yang Kai had already arrived in front of him, the myriad's sword in his hand slashing out in a cross-shaped slash. The shadow demon froze in place, his entire body frozen in place. With a crash, the shadow demon's body shattered like a falling building block, his vitality quickly dissipating. In the blink of an eye, 2 mid-rank demon kings had fallen. On the mountain peak, all the demon kings who were still alive felt their blood run cold. They had never seen such a valiant person before, truly terrifying. Yang Kai held the myriad's sword at an angle, his playful gaze sweeping over the demon kings one after another, filled with aggression. The corner of his mouth curled up, seemingly excited as he said, "Killing makes one happy. I hope you can give this king even more pleasure." Deng 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 deng. Several low-rank demon kings couldn't help but take a few steps back, their expressions changing. This guy was a complete madman. A flame demon took a step forward, his body blazing. He said coldly, "A group of trash, what are you afraid of him for? He's all alone." This was one of the 3 high-rank demon kings. He believed that if he went all out, He could do what Yang Kai had just done, so naturally, he wasn't afraid. With so many demon kings working together, how could they not take down a mere person? The other party was just bluffing. Another high-rank demon king also took a step forward, his body brimming with blood energy. He was also a blood demon. He said indifferently, "Let's do it." Just as he finished speaking, a cloud of sand suddenly rose from the ground, forming a terrifying sandstorm in an extremely short period of time. Looking at its posture, it seemed that it wanted to completely trap and kill Yang Kai. The last high-rank demon king had already made his move. The sandstorm whistled over, every grain of sand filled with abundant demonic yuan, possessing extremely powerful killing power. Yang Kai could have dodged, but he didn't move at all, allowing the sandstorm to wrap around him. A faint smile appeared on his face, as if he was waiting for something. A streak of light suddenly shot over from 10 li away. It was as fast as lightning, and when everyone was caught off guard, it pierced through the sandstorm. Not only that, this streak of light accurately shot into the head of a low-rank demon king, the berserk energy directly blasting that low-rank demon king's head to pieces. She finally made her move. Yang Kai turned his head to look in the direction of the streak of light, his heart greatly calming down. At this time, if Boya still didn't make her move, it would mean that this woman was in cahoots with these people in front of him. Then, he would have many things to guard against. Being targeted by a mid-rank demon king from such a distance was definitely not a fun thing to do. Fortunately, Boya didn't disappoint him. And the reason why this woman had waited until now to make her move and hadn't made a sound before was probably because she wanted to see his ability. If he couldn't even last 1 or 2 rounds, then she would definitely have immediately fled and wouldn't have shown herself. Killing 2 mid-rank demon kings with lightning speed made Boya believe that Yang Kai had the qualifications to cooperate with her. Yang Kai couldn't help but smile. Being targeted by a mid-rank demon king from such a distance was definitely not a good thing, but if this feather demon was a companion, then it would be a lot easier. At this time, a furious roar suddenly came from within the sandstorm, as if a wounded beast was howling in grief. This high-rank demon king sand demon wanted to trap and kill Yang Kai with a sandstorm, but he was sneak attacked by Boya. Even if his life wasn't in danger, he definitely wouldn't have a good time. Just by looking at that sandstorm, one could feel his anger and pain. The sudden death of that low-rank demon king also shocked everyone, and they all turned to look at the source of the light. Only then did they realize that Yang Kai wasn't fighting alone. He actually had an ally, and it was a feather demon that gave them a headache. How could he have an ally? Wasn't he the human that the sage had brought in from the outside? He had only been in the holy city for a few days, so where did he find such a helper? It should be that bitch Boya. Someone suddenly realized, immediately understanding the identity of that feather demon in the distance. Even if they didn't see Boya's shadow, feather demons were already rare, and mid-rank demon king feather demons were even rarer. Only Boya could have participated in this chaotic battle. Damn it. I think she's tired of living. She actually dared to appear in the holy city and participate in this blood battle? What are the people of the blood fighting arena doing? A group of demon kings clamored at the same time. They clearly knew Boya very well and knew her famous name. Those low-rank and mid-rank demon kings couldn't help but move closer to each other, as if they wanted to find some sense of security. Even the 2 high-rank demon kings revealed deep fear. Although Boya was only a mid-rank demon king, as long as she put some distance between them, she was enough to threaten the life of a high-rank demon king. In an environment like the blood-fighting arena, she was naturally an incomparable headache. Just as the group of demon kings were in a state of panic, another streak of light shot over like a meteor chasing after the moon. Once again, it pierced through the sandstorm, causing the sand devil to roar furiously. With the previous example, all the demon kings were on guard. Sure enough, after that streak of light pierced through the sandstorm, it didn't slow down and attacked a low-rank demon king. Fortunately, this low-rank demon king was already prepared and promptly dodged. Otherwise, he would definitely follow in the footsteps of that low-rank demon king. However, although he dodged, that streak of light strangely changed its angle and attacked another low-rank demon king the instant everyone relaxed. With a snort, The streak of light shot through the low-rank Demon King's head, directly shattering it. However, that headless corpse didn't immediately collapse. The flesh around the wound squirmed, as if another head was about to grow out. As long as the demon heart wasn't extinguished, the demon race wouldn't die. This low-rank Demon King's vital point wasn't his head. However, it would take some time and a large amount of yuan qi to grow a new head. Even if Boya's arrow didn't kill him, it was enough to make him lose the qualifications to fight. Bitch! That high-rank Demon King Blood Demon looked in Boya's direction with incomparable resentment. With a flicker of his body, he rushed out, clearly preparing to find trouble with Boya. As long as he could find Boya's whereabouts and either restrain or kill her, there would be no need to worry about the power of hidden arrows. Where do you think you're going? Yang Kai grinned sinisterly. While the sand demon Yuan Qi was heavily injured by Boya's 2 arrows, he punched out, breaking through the sandstorm and blocking the blood demon's path. The blood demon didn't even look at him. It turned into a streak of light, wanting to rush past him. Yang Kai naturally wouldn't let it do as it wished. However, before he could stop it, the flame demon had already pounced on him. A pair of flaming wings spread out on its back, and raging flames wrapped around its fists as if it wanted to incinerate the void. It fiercely punched down and roared, "Where do you think you're going now?" Yang Kai frowned. He raised Myriad's sword diagonally and met the flame demon's attack head-on. With a boom, both sides retreated a dozen or so steps. However, the blood demon had already rushed out during this short period of time. It was too late to stop it. Yang Kai pursed his lips and glanced back. He hoped that Boya could deal with it. If she really couldn't, then he could only say sorry. In any case, they weren't that familiar with each other. While these thoughts were running through his mind, Boya wasn't idle. 3 streaks of light pierced through the void in a triangular formation. At this moment, the sand demon, who had been pierced through by 2 of Boya's arrows, finally couldn't take it anymore. It retracted its divine technique and revealed itself. These 3 arrows came at just the right moment, as if they had been predicted. They arrived right in front of the sand demon the moment it revealed itself. The sand demon's eyes widened. Without much time to think, it shook its body and exploded into a cloud of loose sand. It wanted to use this technique to avoid Boya's attack. Unexpectedly, the 3 arrows also exploded at the same time. Each arrow contained countless tiny iron shavings that mixed with the sand. The sand demon reformed its body once more, and even the iron shavings were absorbed into its body. Its entire body suddenly froze. It glared into the distance and roared, "Bitch!" Yang Kai was amused. Although he didn't know what kind of trick Boya's 3 arrows contained, he knew that the woman must have used some underhanded trick to make this high-rank Demon King Sand Demon suffer such a huge loss. And that was indeed the case. After reforming its body, the sand demon didn't even have the intention to stay in place. It turned around and flew into the distance. Its body swayed as if it had been poisoned, and it disappeared in the blink of an eye. It had to find a place to expel the foreign object that had entered its body, or its life would be in danger. A high-rank Demon King was taken away by Boya just like that. Although it wasn't killed, such a method was enough to show how terrifying that woman was. Yang Kai wanted to keep the sand demon here, but the flame demon kept pestering him, making it impossible for him to free himself. He could only sigh and let the sand demon leave. Chapter 3454. Loud booms rang out incessantly as the energy in the blood-fighting arena became chaotic. Sand and pebbles were sent flying from the mountain peak, and after each strike, the mountain peak would shrink by several dozen meters. The high-rank demon King Flame Demon wielded a fire Sakura spear. Raging flames soared to the sky, and the spear's momentum was so great that it seemed as if it would burn the entire world. Yang Kai wielded Myriad's sword to parry, fighting fiercely. He looked incomparably fierce, but in reality, he was at a disadvantage in a very short time. He had no choice but to do so, not wanting to reveal too many of his trump cards. The two were engaged in a fierce battle, but the other demon kings couldn't interfere at all. Or rather, they didn't dare to interfere. In the distance, Boya was still eyeing them covetously. How could they let their guard down? They could only wait for the blood demon to find Boyer's tracks and eliminate this threat before making any further plans. After a short while, an earth-shattering boom rang out in the distance. Looking over, they saw a mushroom cloud rising into the sky. The Demon Kings were overjoyed. They recognized that it was where Boyer's arrow had come from. Such a commotion meant that the blood demon had already found Boyer and was fighting with her, perhaps even killing her. The flame demon fighting against Yong-kai also relaxed. He grinned maliciously. "You will die without a burial ground." Previously, with Boyer lurking nearby, he didn't dare to use his full strength. Now that the greatest threat had been eliminated, he no longer had any worries. Flames suddenly erupted from his body, and an awe-inspiring demonic chi swept out, burning fiercely toward Yong-kai. But at this moment, from the opposite direction, the sound of something breaking through the air came quickly. Along with that sound, an imposing aura locked onto him. A stream of light that emitted 5 colors broke through the barrier of space and instantly blasted in front of him. The flame devil revealed a stunned expression. He never would have imagined that there would be an arrow coming from this direction. The energy fluctuations and method of this arrow clearly belonged to Boyer, but what was the commotion coming from that location? Was Boyer not there? In the blink of an eye, he didn't have time to think and instinctively dodged. Even though he was a high-rank demon king, he didn't dare to take Boyer's arrow head-on. How could Yong-kai let him do as he wished? When this arrow came, not only was the flame demon surprised, but he was also stunned for a moment. But he quickly understood that this was probably Boyer's plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain. Although he didn't know what method Boyer had used to go from one place to another, he didn't have to be too worried since she had the ability. Under the fluctuations of the space principles, the flame demon was locked in place, and the expression on the flame demon's face instantly became one of shock. With a hiss, the 5-colored flowing light pierced through the flame demon's chest with incomparable precision and exited from its back, bringing with it a large amount of boiling blood that resembled magma. The flame demon roared in pain, the flames burning on its body becoming even more violent, revealing the fury in its heart. The surrounding demon kings, who originally thought that Boyer was doomed and were about to step forward to help, all sucked in a cold breath. They all stopped in their tracks, feeling a chill run down their spines as they inwardly rejoiced. Boom boom! Another 3 arrows flew over. 2 of the spectating demon kings had their heads blown off without a sound. The remaining arrow was still aimed at the flame demon Yong-kai was fighting. After suffering a great loss, the Balrog was already prepared. He could clearly see the trajectory of the arrow, and even though he was injured, it was not difficult for him to dodge it. Just as he was about to dodge, he saw Yong-kai smile at him and growl, "Bind." That feeling of having the space around him locked, as if he had fallen into a swamp, the more he struggled, the deeper he sank. The Flame Demon King's eyes widened as he desperately urged his demonic yuan to break free of this invisible seal. But before he could do as he wished, Boyer's second arrow had already arrived. This arrow pierced through his abdomen, once again bringing out a large amount of blood that burned the ground. Both arrows hit the Flame Demon King's vital points. The tens of thousands of members of the demon race in the spectator stands cried out in alarm. They didn't know exactly what had happened in the blood arena. They only knew that the hidden arrows were incomparably accurate and terrifyingly powerful. Even someone as powerful as this high-rank demon king couldn't dodge them and was heavily injured. If there were a few more arrows, the Flame Demon King's life would be in danger. Before he could finish his thoughts, the third arrow had already arrived. That streak of light pierced through the heavens and the earth, its sharp aura aimed straight for the flame demon's head. Boyer could clearly see that with Yong-kai's help, she didn't have to worry about her arrows being dodged. All she had to do was unleash her firepower from afar. Seeing that streak of light getting closer and closer to him while he couldn't move at all, the flame demon finally panicked. Although the previous 2 arrows had injured him quite badly, they weren't life-threatening. If he couldn't dodge this arrow, he would really be finished. His pupils constricted to the size of needles as the scorching flames all over his body converged in front of him, forming a wall of fire. The arrow light poured into the sea of flames and pierced the flame demon's head with a thud. However, It only pierced 5 inches into his flesh and didn't shatter his brain. The flames condensed from the flame demon's entire body weakened the arrow's power by more than half. The berserk power caused the flame demon's head to tilt back. Without waiting for him to straighten his body, Yang Kai had already raised his sword and slashed down. The myriad's sword cut through the Demon King's protective demonic aura and cut into his neck. The head glared angrily as it flew into the air. Scorching hot blood spurted out like magma from the severed neck. The headless corpse swayed for a moment before quickly retreating. Yang Kai's expression was cold as he chased after the flame demon. The myriad's sword transformed into a net of swords that enveloped the flame demon's body. Sizzling sounds rang out incessantly. By the time Yang Kai withdrew his sword, the flame demon's body had already turned into fine powder that scattered all over the sky. Thud! Only at this moment did the severed head fall from the sky, facing Yang Kai's direction. His mouth squirmed a few times as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he couldn't. His eyes were wide open as his vitality dissipated. He died with a grievance. In the spectator stands, the tens of thousands of demon race members were deathly silent. Everyone's mind was in chaos as they stared at the blood-fighting arena in disbelief. Yang Kai and Boya were both only mid-rank demon kings, but when the two of them joined hands, they were like a hot knife through butter, crushing the combined forces of more than a dozen demon kings. The battle had only lasted for an incense stick's worth of time, but 2 mid-rank demon kings had already died, 4 low-rank demon kings had died, and 1 high-rank demon king had retreated. 1 high-rank demon king had retreated, and another had died in battle. Such an unimaginable battle record had never appeared in the long history of the blood-fighting arena. In the eyes of those who didn't know the truth, 80% of the credit should go to Boya. It was her hidden arrows that had killed and repelled those demon kings. Apart from displaying his invincible might at the beginning, Yang Kai's remaining role was to attract attention and act as a target. But only Boya herself knew that if it weren't for Yang Kai, she definitely wouldn't have been able to hit that flame demon so easily. That sand demon from before had courted death, giving her an opportunity to take advantage of. Of the 3 high-rank demon kings, 1 had retreated, 1 had died, and the last blood demon had been lured elsewhere. How could the remaining mid-rank and low-rank demon kings still have the will to fight? When that flame demon was crushed, they already knew that the situation was far from good. After exchanging glances, they fled in all directions without saying anything. Streams of light appeared once again, flowing endlessly. This time, even without Yang Kai's help, the mid-rank and low-rank demon kings couldn't avoid Boya's hidden arrows. Their bodies collapsed one after another, exploding into bloody mists without leaving behind any corpses. Only 2 low-rank demon kings suddenly turned into streaks of white light, disappearing from their original positions. It was unknown what method they had used to escape, but Yang Kai's divine sense couldn't detect them. He couldn't help but frown. In the distance, a bloody light flashed. It was the blood demon who had left earlier. He originally wanted to look for traces of that bitch Boya, but who would have thought that he would only find a doppelganger? He immediately knew that he had fallen into a trap. After hurrying back, he was shocked to find that the dust of the battle had already settled. The dozen or so demon kings were nowhere to be seen, and the ground was littered with broken corpses. The blood demon's pupils shrank, almost suspecting that he was dreaming. He hadn't been gone for long, so what exactly had happened here? How could such an outcome have occurred? Below, Yang Kai raised his head and looked at the blood demon with a playful gaze. The blood demon's expression was incomparably solemn, and a sense of crisis welled up in his heart. His expression changed slightly as he suddenly turned to a certain direction and shouted, "Boya, you dare ruin our plans? You will die without a burial." The response he received was a sharp arrow. Yang Kai immediately urged his space principles to envelop the blood demon. But to his surprise, the blood demon didn't struggle or evade. He simply glanced at him coldly before clenching his hand. Yang Kai didn't know what he was holding, but he turned into a streak of white light and disappeared. Yang Kai couldn't help but widen his eyes. Just now, the 2 fleeing low-rank demon kings had also disappeared like this. He had thought that those 2 had grasped some kind of mysterious escape technique, but now it seemed that things weren't as he had imagined. They had definitely used some other method to disappear. Yang Kai couldn't help but reveal a contemplative look. There should be some kind of information here that he didn't know. Just as he was thinking this, he suddenly felt an aura lock onto him from afar. Was she going to burn the bridge after crossing the river? Yang Kai grinned. Boya was quite decisive. However, what was to come would come. Between him and Boya, one of them had to die. He slowly turned around and faced where Boya was hiding. His gaze was deep, as if it could pierce through the void. That aura, however, didn't erupt. It only grew stronger when Yang Kai was facing that direction. Yang Kai stood there casually, not a single opening on his body. Xiao Wu, who was watching from the spectator seats, turned pale. She had seen Boya's archery before. Yang Kai was simply courting death. Unexpectedly, even after waiting for a long time, Boya still didn't shoot an arrow. Xiao Wu's nerves were tense to the extreme. Inside the blood arena, Yang Kai could only feel Boya's aura gradually rising. Soon, it reached its peak. That invisible energy actually caused his blood to boil. He immediately realized that he had underestimated this woman. Even though he had the space divine technique, he wasn't confident that he could completely dodge that arrow. As long as Boya shot an arrow, there was a high chance that he would be injured. Chapter 3455. Feather demons were indeed worthy of their reputation for being proficient in archery. Boya was a mid-rank demon king. As long as she put enough distance between them, the power she could display was even more terrifying than a high-rank demon king. The mountain range was quiet. A gentle breeze blew, causing the trees to sway and rustle. At a certain moment, the sharp aura that had locked onto Yang Kai from afar suddenly dissipated. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes and revealed a look of surprise, but he didn't relax his vigilance. Who knew if this was one of Bo Ya's schemes? A moment later, Boya's figure flew over at a leisurely pace. Only then did Yang Kai reveal a meaningful smile. Boya stopped about 300 meters in front of Yang Kai. This was the safe distance she believed to be enough for her to deal with Yang Kai's sudden attack. She tilted her head and sized up Yang Kai. "You are a bit strange." "What's strange about me?" Yang Kai chuckled. Boya slowly shook her head and remained silent. The reason she didn't shoot that arrow just now wasn't because the two of them were working together. Since this was a chaotic battle, everyone was an enemy to her. Choosing to join forces with Yang Kai was only to make it easier for her to eliminate the biggest threat. It turned out that she had made the right choice. She had thought that it would be a bitter battle, but who would have thought that with Yang Kai's cooperation, the dozen or so demon kings would collapse at the first blow? She withdrew her arrow because her instincts told her that even if that arrow could really injure Yang Kai, it definitely wouldn't be able to deal with his violent counterattack. If things went wrong, she might even die here. This guy was definitely hiding his strength. Boya was even more certain of this when she recalled his previous performance. Thus, she decisively withdrew her arrow to avoid making things difficult for herself. "Let's negotiate." Boya pouted at Yang Kai. "What?" Yang Kai frowned at her. He didn't know what else was there to negotiate at this point. Fighting with real swords and spears was the only way out. "How many magic crystals did you bet on yourself?" Boya suddenly asked an unrelated question. Yang Kai muttered to himself for a moment, but he didn't hide it. 100 million. Boya immediately curled her sexy red lips and whistled. Her expression was as frivolous as it could get. Her eyes lit up as she said, "So many. It's none of your business." Yang Kai snorted. What was wrong with this woman? Could it be that she was eyeing the magic crystal that he hadn't gotten yet? Boya giggled. "Give me half." "Why?" Yang Kai sneered. 30%. Get lost. Although he didn't care much about those magic crystals, he wouldn't allow others to covet them. What belonged to him was his. 10% should be fine, right? "If you give me 10%, I'll leave right now. I really don't want to be your enemy, but I don't want to leave just like that. Just take that 10% as my reward for my hard work." "Men shouldn't be so stingy." Boya smiled and said, "I really don't want to be your enemy, but I don't want to just leave like that. It's not up to you whether I'm stingy or not. Before Yang Kai could finish, he suddenly realized something and stared at her in a daze. You can choose to leave here. He recalled the 2 low-rank Demon King and high-rank Demon King that had turned into white light and disappeared. So that's how it is, Boya said. It seems you really don't know anything. Of course you can leave the blood-fighting arena. She then took out an item. Yang Kai took a closer look and found that it was her number plate. He also had one, but the number was different. Boya waved her number plate at him and said, then it's settled. I'll leave first. You give me 10% of the profit. As soon as she finished speaking, Boya turned into a beam of white light and disappeared from where she stood. Who promised you that? Yang Kai curled his lips in disdain. This woman is really good at talking to herself. I didn't have any intention of agreeing and she actually left just like that. But this is also good. Unless it's absolutely necessary, he doesn't want to confront Bo Ya. Her amazing archery skills are really a headache. However, after hearing her reminder, Yang Kai hurriedly checked his number plate and found that there was indeed an option to leave. As long as he touched this option, he would be able to leave the blood-fighting arena. After putting away his number plate, Yang Kai looked around. He had killed quite a few Demon Kings in this battle. Unfortunately, the space rings of those Demon Kings had already disappeared. He had encountered such a situation before. Whenever someone died here, their space ring would immediately disappear. Now that he thought about it, the blood-fighting arena had probably taken it away. This was simply a robbery. Yang Kai silently cursed. Every year, countless members of the demon race would die here, and their belongings would all belong to the blood-fighting arena. How could he not make a fortune in this damned place? In the demon territory, Yang Kai was poor. The only thing he could count on now was the 100 million demon crystals he had bet. Otherwise, if he wanted to buy anything in the future, he would probably be unable to do so. There was not much suspense in the rest of the battle. Although there were quite a number of Demon Kings who had signed up for the Battle Royal, there were only 5 high-grade Demon Kings. Among them, he and Boya managed to kill one, force another to retreat, and heavily injure the last one. The heavily injured Sand Demon had probably already withdrawn from the Battle Royal. As for the remaining 2 high-rank Demon Kings, they were nowhere to be seen. It was unknown if they had already been killed. As for those low-rank and mid-rank Demon Kings, Yang Kai didn't put any of them in his eyes. As long as he encountered one, he easily dealt with them. Those who were quick to react naturally retreated to preserve their lives, while those who were a bit slower could only rest here. Half a day later, when Yang Kai finished off his last opponent, the surrounding space suddenly distorted. The mountain range and trees disappeared in an extremely short time, and the spacious field once again appeared before his eyes. The audience was in an uproar. Xiao Wu stood up excitedly, her face flushed red. He won. He actually won. In such a chaotic battle involving 70 to 80 Demon Kings, Yang Kai had actually survived to the end. This gave her a rather unreal feeling, and it was only now that she felt her heart settle back into her stomach. The demon commander behind her who had bet on Yang Kai was convulsing with laughter, looking as if he had gone crazy. With a bet of 2 million demon crystals and a 10 times payout, that was 20 million. For a demon commander, this kind of number was tantamount to a huge fortune. It was enough to support his cultivation to the Demon King realm, and then find a good set of equipment to arm himself. In the past, he had heard of examples of people getting rich overnight in the blood-fighting arena, and there were quite a few of them. Only when it was his turn did he feel the wonders of this world. The Demon King in charge of the blood-fighting arena went up on stage once again and said some polite words, while congratulating Yang Kai on his victory. Yang Kai keenly noticed that this Demon King's expression was somewhat gloomy, but it was hidden very well. He couldn't help but coldly snort in his heart. Those dozen Demon Kings had joined hands, and the blood-fighting arena was most likely involved, or perhaps arranged by them. Although he believed that Yu Sang was the mastermind behind the scenes, Yu Sang was still a half-saint. It wasn't convenient for her to personally take action in the blood-fighting arena, so she could only instruct others to do it for her. Now that more than half of the dozen Demon Kings had died, while he was still alive and kicking, it would be strange if this guy was happy. After a short while, young Kai was arranged to enter the blood-fighting arena's VIP room, where he was served the highest quality blood wine. Xiao Wu stood beside him, glancing at him from time to time, her face full of worship. After spending a lot of effort to obtain victory, it was naturally time to collect the spoils of war. Thinking about the 100 million high-rank source crystals that would soon be in his hands, and he could also get Li Shiqing to his side, young Kai was in a good mood. This time, he could sell a huge favor to the great emperors of Flower Shadow. If he had anything to ask of her in the future, she probably wouldn't refuse. But what made young Kai feel helpless was that no one came to greet him after waiting for so long. Would the blood-fighting arena go back on their word? Logically speaking, this place was in the Holy City, right under Yu Meng's nose, so they wouldn't do something that would ruin their reputation. However, since the blood-fighting arena had participated in the operation against young Kai, they might not really do as he wished. Young Kai coldly snorted in his heart. If it really came to this point, he would definitely turn this place upside down. At that time, he would alarm Yu Meng and naturally someone would stand up for him. He just didn't know if those guys could withstand Yu Meng's anger. It would be best to take the opportunity to drag Yu Sang into the water and let Yu Meng deal with him. Thinking of this, he actually hoped that the blood-fighting arena would not keep their word and give him an excuse to take action. After a full hour, the door of the VIP room suddenly opened and the middle-aged Demon King, who had previously hosted the blood-fighting arena, walked in with a smile, cupped his fists and said, "Greetings, Brother Yang. Do you know who I am?" Yang Kai looked at him meaningfully. The middle-aged Demon King smiled and said, "I didn't know before, but now I know. Brother Yang, we are honored by your presence. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you." Yang Kai raised his hand and said, "No need for pleasantries. I am waiting for my prize. Where is my prize now? Why can't I see it?" The middle-aged Demon King said, "Brother Yang, wait a moment. That human woman will be brought here soon." He didn't know if it was an illusion or not, but he actually saw a trace of disappointment in Yang Kai's eyes. He couldn't help but be stunned, wondering what he was disappointed about. After a pause, he said, "Before that, let's deal with another matter first." "What is it?" Yang Kai looked up at him. The middle-aged Demon King glanced at Xiao Wu and said, "Is this woman Brother Yang's maid?" "Indeed." Yang Kai nodded. The middle-aged Demon King smiled faintly, "Then I must congratulate Brother Yang. According to our investigation, before Brother Yang participated in that chaotic battle, this woman bet 100 million demon crystals on Brother Yang. According to the odds offered by the blood-fighting arena, if Brother Yang were to win in the end, the blood-fighting arena would have to pay 1 billion demon crystals." Saying so, he took out a space ring and shook it on his hand, smiling as he said, "I have brought the demon crystals for the compensation." Xiao Wu's gaze was immediately attracted to the space ring, and even her breathing became somewhat rapid. 1 billion demon crystals, this was an unimaginable number. Although she hadn't contributed much this time, seeing Yang Kai win so much at once still made her feel proud. Chapter 3456. Yang Kai raised his brow and said, "The blood-fighting arena is really rich. Since you've brought it, this king won't be polite." The middle-aged Demon King's smile didn't falter as he said, "I ask Brother Yang to hand over your space ring so that this king can inspect it." "You want to inspect my space ring?" "Inspect what?" Yang Kai looked at him calmly. What was this guy trying to do? How could a space ring be inspected so casually? Was he trying to pick a fight? The middle-aged Demon King was stunned for a moment before breaking into laughter, looking at Brother Yang's appearance. "I'm afraid you don't know the rules of the blood-fighting arena, right?" "What rules?" Yang Kai suddenly felt that something was wrong and raised his eyes to look at the door. The middle-aged Demon King explained, "It's like this. In order to make it easier for everyone to bet, the blood-fighting arena has always followed the principle of betting first and paying later. Of course, if you win, the blood-fighting arena naturally has to confirm whether you have enough magic crystals. Brother Yang, you might not be familiar with this since you're new here. In the past, There were many people who wanted to take advantage of the situation. They clearly didn't have magic crystals, but they still dared to bet recklessly, causing the blood-fighting arena to suffer a great loss. Since then, the lords in charge of the blood-fighting arena set this inspection rule. As long as Brother Yang has the 100 million magic crystals, this king will immediately pay the full amount. As soon as this statement came out, Xiao Wu's face paled. Others might not know about Yang Kai's situation, but how could she not? Not to mention 100 million magic crystals, Yang Kai didn't even have 1,000,000 magic crystals on him right now. If someone wanted to inspect his space ring, how could Yang Kai possibly take it out? Xiao Wu secretly blamed herself. If she had known this would happen, she would have inquired more about the blood-fighting arena. She didn't know much about the rules of the blood-fighting arena. After all, she had never been here before and had only heard about the blood-fighting arena from hearsay. She had mentioned some things about the blood-fighting arena to Yang Kai before, but she never expected that after winning a bet, they would have to inspect his space ring. If he couldn't pass this hurdle, he would naturally break the rules of the blood-fighting arena and wouldn't be able to obtain the 1 billion magic crystals. Is there such a rule? Yang Kai's face twitched as he glanced at Xiao Wu. Judging from her expression, he knew that she probably didn't know either. Either she didn't know, or the blood-fighting arena was targeting him. It's always been the case. The middle-aged demon king gently nodded, looked at Yang Kai with a smile that was not a smile, and said, "Brother Yang, don't tell me you can't take out 100 million magic crystals?" Yang Kai sneered, "What's a mere 100 million magic crystals? However, wouldn't this inspection be a waste of time? Can't your excellency make an exception?" The middle-aged demon king smiled and shook his head. "The rules of the blood-fighting arena cannot be broken. This is my duty. Please forgive me, Brother Yang." Yang Kai coldly looked at him, and the other side didn't show any weakness. There was even a trace of aggressiveness in his eyes. Yang Kai immediately understood that it didn't matter whether the blood-fighting arena had such a rule or not. They were just deliberately making things difficult for him. Yang Kai immediately curled his lips and said, "Since that's the case, this king doesn't want the 1 billion magic crystals. Just bring my prize over." The middle-aged demon king rubbed his forehead, seemingly having a headache, and said, "Brother Yang, you are making things difficult for this king. According to the rules, if you can't take out the 100 million magic crystals, then you will break the rules of the blood-fighting arena. If you break the rules of the blood-fighting arena, then everything that happened before will be null and void. I'm afraid that the so-called prize will also." Yang Kai suddenly smiled. He had been wondering why this demon king was bothering him about the magic crystals. It turned out that he was waiting for him here. It seemed that the blood-fighting arena didn't want to hand over Li Shiqing. "Do you insist on this?" Kai Yang looked at him faintly, his eyes filled with eagerness. As long as the other side dared to say yes, he would immediately cause a ruckus. He could give up the 1 billion magic crystals bet, but he had to take Li Shiqing away. He absolutely couldn't back down. That woman had been brought to the demon territory for some time. Her situation wasn't good. Although she had been using a secret method to resist the demonic qi and prevent herself from becoming the demon race, who knew how long she could last? If it was too late, even if she was saved, it would be useless. The middle-aged demon king had a playful smile on his face. Just as he was about to speak, the pale Xiao Wu suddenly took a step forward and said in a trembling voice, The bet was made by this servant. It has nothing to do with master." Shua, Yang Kai, and the middle-aged demon king both looked at her. The former didn't know whether to laugh or cry, while the latter's face was as calm as water. In Xiao Wu's opinion, as long as she took the bet, then Yang Kai didn't break the rules of the blood-fighting arena. Naturally, the blood-fighting arena couldn't seize the prize that belonged to Yang Kai. But if that was the case, she was afraid that she was doomed. A mere servant girl, the blood-fighting arena could do whatever they wanted. Even if she was a servant girl in Yu Meng's palace, it would be difficult for her to keep her life. But Yang Kai didn't want to do this. He was still hoping that the other side would give him an excuse to make trouble. Xiao Wu took the bet, so what excuse did he have? "Do you know what you are saying?" The middle-aged demon king had a fierce aura as he looked at Xiao Wu. Immediately, her pale face became even paler, and the scars on her face became even more sinister. Yang Kai's figure moved and blocked in front of Xiao Wu. His eyes were cold as he said, "Your Excellency is really awe-inspiring." The middle-aged demon king looked at Yang Kai indifferently. He was a little surprised by Yang Kai's reaction. After all, was a mere servant girl worth him standing up for? He sneered, "Brother Yang is also awe-inspiring." Yang Kai didn't bother to pay attention to him. He looked back at Xiao Wu and said, "It's none of your business. Move to the side." But Xiao Wu raised her head and wanted to say something, but when she met Yang Kai's eyes, she swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. Yang Kai stood in front of her and stretched his neck. He glanced at the middle-aged demon king and said coldly, "Since we've reached this point, then let's not hide anything. This king wants the prize that belongs to this king, and this king won't give up that 1 billion magic crystals. I'll give you an incense's worth of time to prepare, otherwise, don't blame this king for being impolite." Since they couldn't get along, it was better to tear off all pretenses and make a big fuss. The middle-aged demon king chuckled, "Brother Yang, where did you get the confidence to act so atrociously in the blood-fighting arena?" Yang Kai suddenly said indifferently, 17, TSK. "Your Excellency really thinks highly of me." These words were baffling and Xiao Wu didn't understand at all. However, the expression of the middle-aged demon king slightly changed. This was because the number of demon kings was precisely the number of demon kings lying in ambush outside the door. This time, the blood-fighting arena didn't plan to let Yang Kai do as he wished. They kept forcing him in order to anger Yang Kai. Once he dared to make a move here, the 17 demon kings outside would swarm in. During the chaotic battle, Boya had cooperated with him to kill the enemies. At this moment, he was alone. It was absolutely impossible for him to escape with his life from the hands of so many demon kings. At that time, even if the Holy Master knew about it, he wouldn't be able to blame him. Who told him to dare to cause trouble here? However, this guy's sense of smell was too sharp. The demon kings lying in ambush outside were hidden enough, but he still sensed them all. That middle-aged demon king gently smiled and said, "Brother Yang, what do you mean?" Yang Kai looked at him with disdain and said indifferently, "Time waits for no one. An incense stick's worth of time isn't much. Your Excellency, don't you need to make some preparations?" That middle-aged demon king faintly smiled and said, "This king doesn't need to prepare anything. On the other hand, Brother Yang, please conduct yourself with dignity." As soon as his voice fell, the atmosphere in the VIP lounge suddenly became austere. Xiao Wu nervously watched from the side. She knew that the situation was far from good. She was also confused. She had just brought Yang Kai out for a stroll around the holy city. How did things turn out like this? And just as the atmosphere in the room became more and more tense, suddenly, the patter of footsteps came from outside. At the same time, an aura that made Yang Kai feel uneasy quickly shrouded him. The aura of a half-saint. Moreover, it seemed familiar. This wasn't Na Yuesang's aura. Although Yang Kai had only met Na Yusang once, he had a deep impression of that person's aura. Who was this half-saint? Where had he seen him before? Inadvertently raising his head to take a look, Yang Kai almost laughed out loud. This was because the middle-aged demon king, who was originally looking at him with hostility, had wrinkled his face like a bitter gourd. He had a miserable appearance, as if he was extremely afraid of the person who had come. "Greetings, Master." An orderly greeting came from outside the door. It seemed that the demon kings lying in ambush outside were saluting. With a creak, the door was pushed open and a tall figure stepped in. The person who had come was wearing white clothes. He had a handsome face and an extraordinary aura. He had a smile on his face and his eyes were bright and full of expression. He gave people a kind of evil and wild feeling. He was very attractive to women. Yang Kai revealed a stunned expression. He pointed at the person who had come and said, "You." That middle-aged demon king hurriedly bowed and saluted, "Greetings, Master." The person who had come didn't pay attention to that middle-aged demon king. Instead, he stood 10 meters away from Yang Kai. The corners of his mouth curled up as he said with a smile, "I said that we would meet again." Baizhua. Yang Kai finally remembered this guy's name. No wonder he felt that his aura was somewhat familiar. It turned out to be him. Back then, he had defended Roaring Tiger City with many experts under his command. He had repelled the attacks of the demon race's army one after another and killed countless enemies. The demon race seemed to have realized the terror of Roaring Tiger City and specially invited a half-saint to come out. Who would have thought that this half-saint would just circle around the city walls and then turn around and leave? Before he left, he even told Yang Kai that they would meet again. At that time, when that half-saint introduced himself, he called himself Baizhua. Later, when he learned that Baizhua was one of the demon race's 12 demon saint, Yang Kai understood why Baizhua decisively retreated. Other demon race members couldn't recognize Yu Meng, but he definitely recognized her. That was why he left so decisively. However, Yang Kai didn't expect that he would actually see Baizhua again in the holy city's bloodfighting arena. "Insolent human, how dare you call master by his name?" That middle-aged demon king immediately raised his head and angrily shouted at Yang Kai. Yang Kai glanced at him and said disdainfully, he didn't even say anything. "What are you barking for?" The middle-aged demon king was furious. He raised his head and looked at Baizhua, only to see that he was smiling. He didn't get angry because of Yang Kai's rudeness. His heart skipped a beat as a bad feeling lingered in his heart. Master Baizhua and this human seemed to have a good relationship. Chapter 3457. What are you doing here? Yang Kai looked at Baizhua in astonishment. Wasn't this guy supposed to be in the star boundary? Why was he here? Baizhua turned around and sat down on a rattan chair. The middle-aged demon king immediately walked over and respectfully poured him a glass of blood wine. Baizhua gently shook the transparent glass, and the blood-red wine rippled in the glass, exuding an enchanting aroma. He smiled and said, "I am one of the overseers of the blood-fighting arena. Naturally, I can be here." Yang Kai's mouth opened even wider in surprise. "You are one of Yu Meng's people." Previously, Yu Meng had told him that the entire demon territory was like a broken mirror. There were countless fragmented continents, and each of the 12 demon saint controlled a different number of fragmented continents. They also had a different number of half-saint subordinates. Only now did he know that Baizhua was also one of the half-saint subordinates of Yu Meng. No wonder he recognized Yu Meng at a glance on the city wall that day. On the side, the middle-aged demon king's eyelids couldn't help but twitch when he heard this. He thought that this human was really bold. Not only did he call Baizhua by his name, he even dared to call the holy sage by her name. This was going to be a good show. Master Baizhua might not care about what he said before, but this human dared to be rude to the holy sage. Even if he didn't die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. But to his disappointment, Baizhua didn't react at all, as if he didn't hear Yang Kai's blasphemous words to the holy sage. "Yes," Baizhua smiled and nodded, "I am one of the many half-saint subordinates of the holy sage." "I see." Yang Kai showed a look of understanding, grinned, and sat down on the chair next to him without hesitation. He looked at him with a smile and said, "You just said that you are one of the overseers of the blood-fighting arena?" Baizhua smiled and nodded. "That makes things easier." Yang Kai raised his hand and pointed at the middle-aged demon king, saying, "This guy owes me 1 billion magic crystals. Not only did he refuse to pay, he even tried to embezzle my prize. Tell me, what should I do?" He was now fearless. Perhaps most of the people in the Devil Territory did not know about his relationship with Yu Meng. They only knew that he was a human brought back from the astral boundary by the Lord, so they were not afraid of him. However, Baizhua came back from the astral boundary, so he more or less knew how much Yu Meng valued him. In that case, it was not a problem to use his tiger skin as a flag. Moreover, since Baizhua had appeared at this time, he must have some understanding of what had happened today. There was no need for him to explain too much. Sure enough, Baizhua put down the wine cup in his hand and raised his head to look at the middle-aged demon king. "Is that true?" The middle-aged demon king immediately said, That is pure nonsense. I beg Master to ignore this person's nonsense. Yang Kai slammed the table and stood up. Damn, you dare to lie through your teeth. The middle-aged demon king glanced at Yang Kai and said, this king is just following the rules. He turned to Bai Zhuo and cupped his hands. Master, the matter is like this. Brother Yang participated in a battle and bet 100 million magic crystals on himself. Although he won in the end, according to this subordinate's investigation, this brother Yang did not have the 100 million magic crystals on him. According to the rules of the bloodfighting arena, this subordinate does not have to pay the 1 billion magic crystals and the prize does not count. Bai Zhuo nodded and said, that is true. Yang Kai glared at Bai Zhuo, thinking, did this guy just come to watch the fun? The middle-aged demon king was overjoyed when he saw this and cupped his hands again. Master, this person has ulterior motives and intends to break the rules of the bloodfighting arena. If we do not punish him severely, I am afraid that the reputation of the bloodfighting arena will be destroyed. I beg Master to allow this subordinate to punish this person and protect the prestige of the bloodfighting arena and the holy senior. Yang Kai was dumbfounded when he heard this. He thought to himself, this guy is really sharp-tongued. He actually raised the stakes of a battle to the level of Yu Meng's prestige. It's not that serious. Bai Zhuo laughed and looked at the middle-aged demon king. Have you checked his space ring? Are you sure he didn't bet 100 million magic crystals? The middle-aged demon king said, he didn't, but this person refused to cooperate. He probably doesn't have that many magic crystals. Bai Zhuo nodded when he heard this. It seems that the problem still lies with the 100 million magic crystals. Turning to Yang Kai, he asked, do you have 100 million magic crystals? If you do, just take them out and let him inspect them. Yang Kai wanted to spit in his face, thinking, where would I get 100 million magic crystals? If I did, I would have taken them out long ago. Isn't this asking the obvious? Just as he was feeling indignant, he saw Bai Zhuo wink at him and glance at his hand. Bai Zhuo then slowly picked up his glass and sipped his blood wine, deliberately showing his space ring to Yang Kai. His cultured and refined manner, coupled with his handsome face, made Xiao Wu, who was standing at the side, stare straight at him. Yang Kai stared blankly for a moment before suddenly smiling, reaching out to Bai Zhuo and saying, I remember, Brother Bai, you should return the 100 million magic crystals you borrowed from me last time. Bai Zhuo almost spat out the wine in his mouth as he looked at Yang Kai in shock. He really wanted to ask him, when did I borrow 100 million magic crystals from you? His original intention was to ask Yang Kai to borrow 100 million magic crystals from him. In any case, he would be able to return it later. Who would have thought that Yang Kai wouldn't play by the rules and would actually play such a hand? One was borrowing, one was returning, the other was simply not the same concept. The middle-aged demon king's eyes also widened. He looked at Yang Kai, then at Bai Zhuo, thinking, that's not right, right? Ha ha. Bai Zhuo forced out a smile and put down his wine glass. He coughed dryly and glanced at Yang Kai from the corner of his eyes. He really wanted to get up and leave, no longer caring about Yang Kai's affairs. He had never seen such a shameless person before, but since things had already gotten to this point, he could only follow along and say, it's time to return it. Saying so, he actually took out another space ring and fiddled with it. The middle-aged demon king was speechless upon seeing this. How could he not understand such a clumsy play? However, he couldn't understand why Master Bai Zhuo would cooperate with this human. He wanted to say something to dissuade him, but he didn't have the courage to speak up. If Bai Zhuo really wanted to protect this human, there was nothing he could do. If he spoke up at this time, he would only offend Bai Zhuo. More importantly, Yu Sang had already left, otherwise, he wouldn't be sitting here. After a short while, Bai Zhuo threw the space ring to Yang Kai and glared at him fiercely. Yang Kai pretended not to see it and didn't even check it. He directly threw the space ring to the middle-aged demon king opposite him and said arrogantly, check it. The middle-aged demon king pinched the space ring as if it was a hot potato and said with a sad face, there's no need to check it. This was a space ring that Bai Zhuo had fiddled with. Even if there wasn't a single magic crystal inside, There was still 100 million magic crystals inside. There was no need to check it. Since that's the case, shouldn't you give me my prize and the magic crystals I won? Yang Kai coldly snorted. The middle-aged demon king didn't look at Yang Kai and instead looked at Bai Zhuo with an awkward expression. There's no problem with the compensation of magic crystals, but the prize, as far as he knew, that human woman had only been brought here by Yu Sang to show her face and then taken away by him. She wasn't in the blood-fighting arena at this moment. If Yang Kai wanted a prize at this time, where would he get it? What's wrong with the prize? Yang Kai's expression sank. He had participated in the battle mainly for Li Shiqing. The 1 billion magic crystals were secondary. Now that he saw the demon king stuttering, he suddenly had a bad premonition. Cold sweat seeped out of the middle-aged demon king's forehead as he looked at Bai Zhuo with an awkward expression. Bai Zhuo smiled faintly and reached out to press Yang Kai, calm down. Just as he finished speaking, he heard a knock on the door from outside. Then, the door was pushed open and a tall and sturdy demon race walked in with large strides. Judging from the aura of this demon race, he was surprisingly a high-rank demon king. Not only that, but there was also a woman at his side. She was beautiful and tall. Who else could it be but Li Shiqing? When the middle-aged demon king saw this, he turned pale with fright and looked at Li Shiqing in astonishment. Wasn't this woman taken away? How come she was brought back? Looking at the tall and sturdy high-rank demon king, he understood that Bai Zhuo and Yu Sang weren't on good terms. It was well known that this matter was a secret confrontation between the two. Now, it seemed that Bai Zhuo had won by a small margin. For a moment, his back was dripping with cold sweat. He didn't want to get involved in a battle between half-saints. It was better to withdraw as soon as possible. After the tall and sturdy demon race walked in with Li Shiqing, he cupped his hands towards Bai Zhuo and then turned around and walked out without saying a word. Yang Kai's eyes flashed as he vaguely understood something. On the other side, after Li Shiqing was brought in, she looked around nervously. For her, ever since she was brought to the demon territory, she knew that she was doomed. Now, she was trying her best to prevent herself from being corroded by the demonic qi. But no matter what, she couldn't change the fact that she would eventually become a demon. Therefore, she didn't have the slightest good impression of the demon race. But as she looked around, her gaze suddenly stopped and she looked at Yang Kai in a daze. Her eyes flashed with a trace of disbelief. She didn't know Yang Kai, but she could see that Yang Kai was somewhat different from the other demon race. He seemed more like a human. How could there be a human in the demon territory? Moreover, he wasn't affected by the demonic qi. Was this man also captured? But it didn't seem like it. Just as she was thinking this, she saw Yang Kai walk towards her step by step and stand 3 feet in front of her. You! Li Shiqing opened her mouth, but just as she spat out a word, Yang Kai suddenly slapped her. With a crisp slap, Li Shiqing's entire body flipped a few times in the air and fell to the ground. Blood flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Xiao Wu couldn't help but open her mouth wide. That middle-aged demon king was also extremely shocked. Bai Zhuo's eyes flashed and he revealed a trace of a smile. He once again raised his wine cup and sipped the blood wine as if there was no one present. Chapter 3458. Li Shiqing was stunned by the slap. Although she had been captured and brought to the demon territory, she hadn't been mistreated in the past few days. The demon race had only treated her a little harshly, but today, she was slapped by a family she suspected to be from the human race. She immediately saw stars and couldn't come back to her senses. Who is he? Why did he hit me? Before she could think of anything, Li Shiqing felt her chest tighten. Looking up, she saw the man who had slapped her standing in front of her with 1 foot on her chest. He leaned over slightly and looked down at her with a ferocious look on his face. He sneered, "Do you know who I am?" Li Shiqing shook her head in fear, crystal tears overflowing from her eyes. Seeing this, Kai Yang was surprised. How could this woman be so easily tossed around? She's a second-order Emperor Realm Master, what's the point of crying? He didn't really want to hit Li Shiqing, But his current situation was because he had become the demon race and became the demon race's Tao. He had betrayed the star territory and was hated by many masters in the star boundary. At this time, it was only right for him to show some hostility and anger. Who knew that this slap would end up in such a situation? Not thinking too much about it, Yang Kai maintained his ferocious look and bared his teeth at Li Shiqing. Look carefully, this king is called Yang Kai. As soon as he said this, Li Shiqing seemed to be greatly shocked and looked at him in disbelief. She had obviously heard of Yang Kai's name before, but the person in front of her was completely different from the one she had heard of. The Yang Kai she knew was the brightest star in the star boundary and would definitely shine brightly in the future, but the person in front of her was like a gambler who had lost his pants. Yang Kai continued to grin. From now on, you are mine. You will do whatever I tell you to do. If you dare to say no, I will make you suffer a fate worse than death. Do you understand? Li Shiqing was in a trance. Only when Yang Kai asked her again and she felt a sharp pain in her chest did she nod hurriedly. Tears as big as beans fell from the corners of her eyes. She looked miserable. Yang Kai curled his lips, revealing a dull expression. He took his foot down, turned around, and stretched out his hand towards the middle-aged demon king. Where is my magic crystal? The middle-aged demon king immediately handed over the interspatial ring that he had prepared and looked at him with a complicated expression. He thought to himself, no wonder the Lord brought this person back to the demon territory. His demonic nature is too strong. Yang Kai put away the space ring, swept it with his divine sense, and after confirming that there were no mistakes, he grinned at Bai Zhuo and said, Brother Bai, since this matter is over, I'll be taking my leave first. Bai Zhuo smiled and stood up. Let's go together. I'm going to visit the Lord as well. Yang Kai naturally had no objections. He asked Xiao Wu to take Li Shiqing and left the room. The two chatted along the way, and Yang Kai soon discovered that Bai Zhuo seemed to be interested in befriending him. His words and demeanor were quite cordial, which made him somewhat unsure whether he was doing this for the sake of Yu Meng. However, Bai Zhuo did not mention the 100 million magic crystals, and Yang Kai did not plan to return it. After all, for a half-saint, 100 million magic crystals should be nothing. After walking for a short while, a person suddenly blocked their path. There was no one within a radius of 1,000 feet from where the person stood. His imposing aura swept out in all directions, making many demon race members retreat. Yu Sang. This person must have received some news from the blood-fighting arena, so he hurriedly rushed over. Yang Kai looked at Bai Zhuo thoughtfully, secretly guessing that he had expected this, so he deliberately accompanied him back to the palace. Otherwise, if he was blocked by Yu Sang here alone, he was afraid that he would not be able to get away with it. At this moment, Yu Sang's eyes were spitting fire, and his whole body was surging with murderous intent. After glancing at Yang Kai and Li Shiqing, he stared at Bai Zhuo indifferently and said in a cold tone, "Why do you want to meddle in my business?" Bai Zhuo chuckled. "I have nothing to do, so I have to find some fun." Yu Sang coldly snorted, raised his hand and pointed at Yang Kai. 30 million demon pills and give this person to me. Million demon pills? Yang Kai's eyes flashed. What the hell is this? However, according to Yu Sang's words, he obviously wanted to use 30 million demon pills in exchange for Bai Zhuo to stop. In this place, at this time, as long as Bai Zhuo withdrew, Yu Sang could do whatever he wanted. Although this place was right under Yu Meng's nose, as long as Yu Sang acted fast enough, he would not leave any trace. He glanced at Bai Zhuo and found that this guy's expression changed. He immediately knew that the million demon pills must be some kind of amazing treasure. However, that was all. Bai Zhuo slowly shook his head and said, "I'm afraid I can't let you get what you want, 50 pills. Bai Zhuo reached out to touch his forehead and said with a wry smile, "What a tempting bargaining chip, 80 pills. Yu Sang's voice rose, as if he had been cut off a few kilograms of flesh. "This is my last bottom line." Bai Zhuo turned his head and looked at Yang Kai, and then looked at Li Shiqing. Yang Kai's heart tightened. Fortunately, Bai Zhuo did not agree. He just said, "Can you change it? I'll return this woman to you." He pointed at Li Shiqing. "Don't even think about it." Yang Kai was furious. He stared at him and said, This is my trophy. Bai Zhuo heard him and shrugged at Yu Sang. Then there's no other way. Yu Sang's face was as cold as water. He said coldly, "Are you sure you won't regret it? You should know that angering me won't do you any good." Bai Zhuo smiled slightly. "Don't be an alarmist. I know how powerful you are. If I were you, I'd worry about my own situation first. Do you think the Lord will let you go easily this time?" Yu Sang could not help but be silent. He could not help but burst out with a fierce aura, which made Yang Kai tense up. Bai Zhuo added fuel to the fire. "If you don't do it, we'll leave." As he said this, he actually called for Yang Kai and the others to walk towards him. With him in front, the group of people were not hindered at all. The aura of a half-saint was like a gentle breeze. Not long after, they brushed past Yu Sang. Yang Kai turned his head and glanced at him. He saw that Yu Sang's face was twisted to the extreme. He clenched his fists as if he was trying to suppress his impulse to fight. If he really fought with Bai Zhuo here, he would not be able to bear Yu Meng's blame, not to mention whether he had a chance of winning. He could only watch Yang Kai and the others leave. He was very angry. When they were far away from Yu Sang, Yang Kai sighed softly. He looked at Bai Zhuo from the corner of his eyes and said, "You didn't really want to use me to make a deal just now, did you?" Bai Zhuo laughed. "How could I? If I really did that, the Lord would kill me." As he spoke, he glanced at Li Shiqing, whose eyes were red and swollen. "But this woman, if she can be exchanged for 80 infinite demons pills, it would be a good deal." "What is the infinite demons pill?" Yang Kai took the opportunity to ask. Bai Zhuo pretended to be mysterious and said, "You will know in the future." It is useless to ask now. He did not want to say, so Yang Kai changed the topic. Not long after, they arrived at the palace. Bai Zhuo wanted to see Yu Meng, so he parted ways with Yang Kai. Returning back to his residence, Yang Kai asked Xiao Wu to arrange a room for Li Shiqing. He took the map he bought and hid in the room to study it. In the demon territory, he could not count on anyone, and it was not easy to ask for the whereabouts of the great emperors of the bright moon. He could only work hard on his own. After careful research, he discovered that the demon territory was extremely vast. There were no less than 500 to 600 fragment continents. Although they varied in size, if one were to calculate the total area, it was definitely much larger than the star boundary. Wanting to find the traces of the great emperors of the bright moon among so many fragments was undoubtedly like looking for a needle in a haystack. For a while, he did not have the slightest clue, causing him to scratch his head. While he was at his wit's end, he suddenly remembered Li Shiqing. This woman had been in the demon territory for a long time. Although her situation was not good, she might know something. Putting away the map, he opened the door and walked out. Calling Xiao Wu, he asked for Li Shiqing's residence and went straight there. The residence that Xiao Wu arranged for Li Shiqing was not far from Yang Kai's residence. It was only a few turns away. Pushing open the door without any trace of politeness, Yang Kai strode in. Looking around, he saw Li Shiqing curled up in the corner. Her hands were hugging her legs and her chin was resting on her knees. Her eyes were filled with tears and she looked very pitiful. Hearing the movement, Li Shiqing looked up and saw that it was Yang Kai. Her body trembled subconsciously, obviously remembering the violence that Yang Kai had done to her before. She could not help but want to retreat, but there was a wall behind her. Where could she go? Yang Kai grinned maliciously, causing her to become even more terrified. Waving his hand, Yang Kai closed the door and walked towards her. Li Shiqing's whole body collapsed. Her beautiful eyes widened and her breathing stopped. She could only watch as the tall figure covered the light above her head. Yang Kai looked down at her condescendingly, feeling a little strange. After all, for a long time, Yu Meng had appeared in front of him with this face. Raising his hand slightly, he pulled a chair over. But as soon as he moved, Li Shiqing suddenly reached out and hugged her head, whispering, "Don't hit me, don't hit me." Yang Kai did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was this woman really the disciple of the Flower Shadow Great Emperors? Why was she so timid? How did she cultivate to the second-order Emperor realm? Or was it because the Flower Shadow Great Emperors protected her so well that she developed such a cowardly character? Sitting on the chair, Yang Kai raised his hand and knocked on her head, making a soft thump. In the next moment, Li Shiqing rolled and fell to the ground, her eyes closed and motionless. Yang Kai blinked and reached out to check her breathing with a strange expression. Sweeping her with his divine sense, he facepalmed and was speechless. Li Shiqing had actually fainted. What the hell? I didn't even say a word. I wanted to ask her something, but now I can't ask anything. Helpless, Yang Kai could only wait. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.